Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral, that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of September 20th, 2023 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order? Councillors Fisher and Moore, that the public meeting of the council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023-013 by D and M Bowen and zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023-014 by C Hazelwood be called to order at 6:30 p.m. And my apologies, I did miss O Canada. So at this time, I would ask that we rise for the singing of O Canada. O Canada, our home and native land, through patriot love, in all us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you. And I've done that. Welcome to this public meeting of the Township of Springwater Council, held in compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to the proposed amendments in the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendment. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make oral submissions through Zoom or in person. Any person wishing to make an oral submission is to have notified the township prior to 8:30 this morning and has been added to the commenters list. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or written submissions to the township before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment has passed, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all parts of the appeal. All comments and questions should be directed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in the meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker, as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. These minutes of the meetings will be posted to the township's website. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of ZB 2023-013 by D and M Bowman for 38 Foyston Park Circle. The meeting and which dates the notice was given. Clerk Ainsworth.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 30th day of August, 2023 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 47 properties in the Township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from Foyston Park Circle. Notice was also posted on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from Enbridge in an email dated August 31st, 2023, and from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority in an email dated August 31st, 2023, both of which can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
I will now call upon Planner Belcourt, who is joining us via Zoom, to outline the purpose and effect of the proposal.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin and Council. I'll just share my screen here. Okay, how do I make this big? 1 second. Sorry, it's just blocking me at the top here. Can you guys see the screen? I'm sorry, it's not going full screen for some reason.
We can see it.
Okay, thank you. The application before you this evening by the Bowens is seeking to rezone 38 Foyston Park Circle to a new site-specific R1 exception zone. The purpose of the amendment is to permit the construction of a new oversized detached accessory building as illustrated on the site plan here. The building is proposed to be located in the rear yard. The applicant also wishes to keep an existing garden shed on the property. In summary, the proposed new structure is to have a ground floor area of 78.1 square meters or 840 square feet and a height of 6.52 square meters. The structure is to be used for personal storage by the applicant. When combined with the existing garden shed on the property, a total accessory building ground floor area of 93.9 square meters is the result. Additionally, the amendment intends to clarify the rear yard setback for accessory buildings in the area being 1.2 meters or 4 feet. All other applicable requirements of the zoning bylaw are to be complied with. Staff have conducted a review of the application and the applicable planning policies as detailed in the recommendation report attached to tonight's agenda. With that, I conclude my presentation. However, should council have any questions, both myself and Mr. Bowen, who I believe is in attendance this evening tonight in the council chambers, welcome any comments council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Belcourt. I now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions and make comments regarding.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll ask if there's any members of the gallery this evening that would like to make oral comment or question. And seeing none, thank you. And at this point, council, are there any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you to everyone who participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing an interest in this matter. We will now move on to ZB 2023-014 by C. Hazelwood for 2091 Dwyer Road. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm the notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 30th day of August 2023 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 23 properties in the township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location that was visible from Dwyer Road. Notice was also posted on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in regards to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence has been received from Enbridge in an email dated August 31st, 2023, from the Township of Springwater Building Department in a letter dated September 7th, 2023, from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority in a letter dated September 18th, 2023, from C. Gerard, resident of 2111 Dwyer Road in an email dated September 19, 2023, R&P Hirschfeld, resident of 2079 Dwyer Road in an email dated September 19, 2023. S. Mason, resident of 11714 County Road 27 in an email dated September 19, 2023. T and D Taylor, resident 11701 County Road 27 in an email dated September 19, 2023. And all correspondence can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. I will now call upon the applicant to give the presentation outlining the purpose and effect of the proposal. So if I can ask you just to come to this before us here and pull the microphones right in Thank you. And we will begin by stating your name and address, please. Thank you.
Chad Hazelwood, 2091 Dwyer Road, Springwater, Ontario. Here. Okay. Sorry, I thought when everything was sent out, I didn't put a presentation together because I thought that was all in the package that was already sent out as far as that. So I just had a few words just wanted to say, and then any questions. So I'd like to take a minute to tell you about myself, my family, and what our intent is here today. I live in Springwater on Dwyer Road since 2009. Since then, I've had a son, and most recently have my better half and her two boys move in to join us to make us a family of 5. My girlfriend here with me today moved here from an hour away. Her 3 siblings and their family live out of country. Her father and her lifelong friends live a distance away also. We decided it would be great to build a secondary residential unit on the property so that when family and friends want to visit, they have a place to stay. We are creative people and wanted to do something unique and make an experience for them when they came to visit. The area behind the primary structure is forest on 4 acres and wanted to keep that as undisturbed as much as we could. This is where the concept we've submitted has come before you. The unit would be at the back of the property in the forest and would be out of sight from the road or even the primary structure. Unfortunately, the reality is that nothing is inexpensive and these days, so we decided that we could also utilize it as a short-term rental to help with the costs of having a secondary residential unit. I've been working with as many of the stakeholders involved to make this a safe, positive, and unique addition to Springwater. We have and will continue to consult the building department, planning department, fire department, architect, engineer, and the Notice Conservation work together to satisfy any concerns that have been identified.
Thank you. I will now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding this.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an online oral submission.
Thank you. Are there any individuals present that would like to make a comment on this issue? Yes, come on forward. I'm just going to ask that you state your name and your address, please.
My name is Ron Hirschfeld. I reside at 2079 Dwyer Road, Midhurst, Ontario. And my comment is I kind of have an issue having an Airbnb on a private street where it's going to attract unwarranted and unwanted guests and basically be an invasion of our privacy. My family's owned the property and surrounding areas for over 100 years, and I would like to keep it as it is.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to come forward? Not seeing any members of, there's, come on forward. And again, just your name and address, please.
My name is Dave Taylor. My wife and I live at 11701 County Road 27. So just at Dwyer Road, we're an adjacent property. And I wasn't sure in the sense of process of order. So if we had to make an oral comment to be able to appeal a decision later if we needed to. So that's sort of part of why I came up, just to be sure. The only comment I would make, and similar to I think a number of the neighbors who are here, not to speak for them, but in support of the previous comments, the concern that we have is the size of the secondary residence and the potential use for something like an Airbnb, the impact that would have on the neighborhood, on the adjacent properties. The size of the secondary structure, I think when I read the plans, we're getting up between the floors somewhere around 1,800 square feet, which is substantial, as well as the height. So an 1,800 square foot secondary residence that's 65, 70 feet in the air has the potential to greatly impact, in our view, all of the neighboring backyards, people using their pools, their backyards, with an Airbnb rental as a, oversight fire watch type tower viewing everybody is a concern for us. As well, a number of us who have been there for 20 to 30 years, when we built and expanded our properties, we had to tear down secondary residences to build our current residence, which again, in following the plan. So we're opposing the amendment to the bylaw for a lot of those reasons, and concerned about what would happen to other properties if it was passed. That's all I have.
Thank you. Come on forward. I have no prizes. It's not The Price is Right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Perfect. And just your name and your address, please.
Chris Gerard, 2111 Dwyer Road. Longtime friend of Chad's for 20 years, a neighbor. So Chad's got good intentions, but I think he forgot that we live on a quiet residential street. So we are opposed to the second unit. It's got great potential if he's got the right idea. But if Chad's to sell the property down the street, we don't know who buys it. We don't know who runs the next Airbnb. And having dealt with Airbnbs in downtown Barrie and surrounding areas, I know what they attract. So I kind of like my quiet street, my quiet neighbor. The 62 viewing will have a very good view of my backyard, my pool, which when he built his new house, when he took care to make sure our lots lined up, our backyards are the same, he took care there, but I think he's stretching it a little bit with this second unit. So we're totally opposed to it. He has a very large house. There's room enough in the house for guests. And like Dave said, I had to tear down my original second dwelling as well. So we're opposed to the promotion. We don't want to change. It's going to bring extra people. It'll bring more dirt bikes. It'll bring more snowmobiles. And it is a quiet residential street, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Seeing none, council, any comments or questions? I have Councillor Thompson and Councillor Alexander.
Just through the chair to Mr. Hazelwood. So you've mentioned in your letter that you would like to rent it out as an Airbnb when your family's not living there. Would you have any indication of percentage of time? Would they use it 2 weeks a year, 2 months a year?
Sorry, I'm just gonna ask that you come back to the, thank you. We're just gonna, sorry, my apologies, we're just pulling up the Zoom again.
Yeah.
And now we're good. Thank you.
So the 3 of the siblings do live in Florida, and when they come up, it's usually for something like 3 weeks. That time will be spent between cottage and other places as well. And then they have their families with them as well. And then her father also lives out of town and friends and so on. So it will be split up. To say a percentage, we can't really know what that would be. As I say, we haven't really, as far as their intent each year will change and so on. So I don't know. I'd say it's probably going to be fairly low, 15-20% of the time it'll be family. The rest of the time it would be looking to be rented out.
Councillor follow on.
And through the chair to CEO Schmidt, I know that the council's awaiting a staff report on short-term rentals. Do you know the status of that report as to when that report would come back to us that we would have a policy in force?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Colgan, if I can defer that to Clerk Ainsworth, as that falls in her portfolio, maybe she can speak to it.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. Staff are currently working through the project. We don't have an exact timeline, but it would be over this coming winter. I'm just not certain whether it would be early winter or late winter.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. I'm not sure if this would go to Clerk Ainsworth or elsewhere. With kind of following on Councillor Thompson's question a little bit. So I know we are looking at a bylaw with respect to short-term rentals. I don't believe there's any type of bylaw currently with respect to Airbnbs. Is there within the township?
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. No, there are currently no regulations. There are regulations that we utilize within the noise bylaw and whatnot, but no actual regulations.
I have Councillor Garwin and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to either Planner Belcourt or Director Spagnell. Are we aware when we're specifically speaking about the uniqueness of this build or potential build, is there anything similar in the municipality that we know of today that would be, again, an example of sorts?
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to Councillor Garwood. Not a similar use with respect to a residential use. I would say the height and the general character of what's being proposed is more of it's kind of a lookout nature of a structure, but not tied to a residential use. No, so we don't have anything like that in the municipality.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Obviously, the concerns are, I guess, the neighbors' backyards for one. You did say that it was in a forested area. 62 feet up in the air is fairly substantial.
So the top platform is 62 feet. The main structure is at 30 feet.
Yeah.
So it's 20 foot by 20 foot with a loft. So 400 square feet is the main area, and then the loft inside. So back there, and clean the trees and so on. One of the trees when I cut down was 75 feet. So it'll still be below in the leaves from that area, from my house, which is about in line with the closest, I think is one of the furthest back houses. During the summer and so on, when there's leaves are out, you cannot see my house from or in the neighborhood.
And obviously there are concerns, as
Yep.
one gentleman pointed out, is you may not always be the owner there, and that leaves the potential for trees being cut down as well. So I guess I'm just kind of saying, you know, from where I'm sitting, there is that aspect of having strangers. Basically, it's not your neighbor up there all the time or their relatives. There's the odd stranger that might be looking down at what you're doing in your place. So I can certainly sympathize with their concerns there. The other question I had was with respect to the rental aspect. I think that just simply compounds the fact that not only is it way up in the air, but the fact, once again, you're going to have some strangers staying there. And Township does currently not currently have one, but in the process of developing a short-term rental bylaw, because as another gentleman said, it has created some issues in the past. But I do appreciate the fact that you've actually brought that forward so that nobody's going to be taken by surprise in that respect. But I'm just letting you know I can appreciate their concerns.
Yep.
And I did want to, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to the Director Spagnell there, what is the normal maximum height? I looked on the report here, and usually it illustrates what the maximum height is per the zoning bylaw, but on this one it doesn't. I'm just curious to know by how much this structure will be exceeding that height.
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So basically to the top of the structure, we're talking 62 feet, is my understanding, roundabout. In general terms, the zoning bylaw allows for the consideration of up to 3 stories. So this would be relatively close to that, or it would exceed it. But when we're talking about additional residential units and tied to a residential use, that wouldn't necessarily follow the typical height provision that we find for an additional residential unit. The policies of the official plan and the provisions of the zoning bylaw look to try to keep additional residential units in keeping with the community character, the built form of the area and the houses. So I could say in general terms, with respect to that policy direction, this would be an exceedance of what's typically considered to be accepted from a zoning provision perspective and from a policy perspective related to additional residential units.
Thank you.
Councillor Fisher?
I just wanted to say, in looking over the plans for what you're proposing, I think architecturally it's really neat, actually. I think it's a neat project. That being said, I think anyone investing in a secondary suite like this, a large sum of money prior to our staff report coming forward, you know, if you're dependent on the income to pay for it, I'd take that into consideration. That might be a determining factor for you doing it or not. I also have to say, and I've said this before in council, I share some of your neighbors' concerns throughout Springwater as it pertains to short-term rentals and what it can potentially bring into a residential area. You know, it's one thing if it's a farm or a chalet, but I do share some of those concerns across Springwater. So
and part of our intent with this as well is to keep it small as far as so there's, in the plans, there's the one bed. And then there's gonna have 2 Murphy beds to fold down for, again, the family. It's meant for primarily one couple and if they have kids. So that would be like all the family has is 4 is the max they have. So, and that's kind of what we were planning on, even as the kind of rental, no more than that, and focusing on that.
I'm going to follow on to Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Garwood.
I'm not familiar with your home. I am familiar with the street you're on. But do you feel that you have ample parking to facilitate 2 or 3 extra
It's 4 acres
cars?
in total, so
Yeah.
they would come back and there'd be all parking right in front of it, so.
Right, okay.
They'd have to drive right by our house to get around to it.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Stemming off of what Councillor Fisher had noted, while I find the drawings quite fascinating and it might be a neat thing to go stay in one day, I can also respect the concerns that residents are sharing today. Pretty basic question. Why not put it on the ground?
We wanted something unique, something that, it's kind of the bucket list type thing that we wanted to do. I mean, we did discuss, a log cabin kind of idea or something like that as well. I've seen other ones, again, more of the States, things like that. I've seen these that are, and just that, and always, I guess, personally childhood type thing as well. Just it seemed to be kind of the treehouse idea.
Thank you. Councillor, are there any further questions? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Mr. Hazelwood. Mr. Hazelwood, how far from the road would this structure be on your property? It looks like it's in the center of your property. And
No, the house isn't, my house is in the center of the property. This is the very back.
at the very back. So how far from the road, roughly?
I'd have to guess 800 feet.
So fairly
Yeah,
substantial.
you'd never be able to see it from the road. It would be the house is back in and the tree line starts right behind the house. And it's over 2 acres that go back, and it's 300 feet wide. So whatever that would be, 300 feet wide and then 2 acres back.
Yeah, so it's in the wider part, because I noticed the parcel of property
Yeah,
that you
the-
have goes up and then widens
Yeah.
and then goes back.
At some point, somebody split off half acre off each of the front. And then it's kind of T-shaped there, and that's the Dwyer Road is on that side. On the other side is the at 40 some or 440 acres of land that's behind there.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Not seeing any other questions from council. Thank you very much. Thank you to all who participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing interest in the matter. Council, may I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the public meeting? Deputy Cabral, Councillor Garwood, that the public meeting of the council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for ZB 2023-013 Bowen and ZB 2023-14 Hazelwood does now adjourn at 6:58 p.m. May I have a mover and seconder for the report regarding ZB 2023-13 Bowen at 38 Foyston Circle? Councillors Moore and Fisher, that the report from the planner regarding ZB 2023-013 dated September 20th, 2023 be received, and that a bylaw be presented to council for consideration and approval at the September 20th council meeting. At the September 20th, 2023 council meeting. Are there any questions on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for ZB 2023-014 Hazelwood at 2091 Dwyer Road, and that the application be referred back to staff. Councillors Fisher and Cabral. That council having a public meeting in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended on zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023 for 014 by C Hazelwood, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. Are there questions on that motion? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much. I will now call upon Tim Late to present. And this is regarding the St. Vincent Street. Tim. Oh, there we are. Not in the gallery. I can give you a moment if you want to stay around for everything else that's going to happen, you're more than welcome to, but if you do need to excuse yourself, you're more than welcome. We're not interrupting. All right, and I do have Mr. Late here on us, so may I have thank you. Oh, you're perfect. Can you hear us?
I can.
Oh, perfect.
Can
And
you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yes, please proceed.
Wait, do you want me to wait till everyone leaves or? Am I good?
I think you're good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Tim Light, living in Midhurst. So thanks for the opportunity. The subject is in regards to St. Vincent Street, the paved shoulder rumble strip, which runs between Midhurst and to Barrie and is basically around the large S corner that is there. I'm not sure if everyone's aware what rumble strips are, and from my understanding, there are two types. There's shoulder and transverse rumble strips. They're grooves that are made in the pavement. The shoulder intent is to make you aware that you're near the edge, which you'll find very often on the highway edge, so you don't go off in the ditch. And transverse are on the roadway where you drive and is a caution to slow you down. The repaving of St. Vincent that occurred a few years ago had the paved shoulder added to it, which was a very welcomed upgrade at the time. The shoulders then had these rumble strips installed prior to the S corner, throughout the S corner and after it. And then later, a couple of years, transverse rumble strips were installed just prior to the S corner on each side. Under my understanding was that these were applied to prevent accidents, as there had been quite a few people that were going in the ditch around the corners. However, I do recall seeing accidents that were still occurring when the shoulder rumble strips were there, but once they put the transverse rumble strips in, I did see quite a reduction, if I don't even recall if there was many, if any. So my concern is I find cyclists, they don't use that pedestrians will walk there, and the cyclists don't drive there because of those, that it's very bumpy obviously for them, and they can't go back and forth. And I've seen passing vehicles on the road with oncoming traffic, and I'm concerned there's going to be a pedestrian accident at some point. I presume the initial intent of the paved shoulder when it was added was to assist in making a safe space for pedestrians and cyclists. I may be incorrect, but that's what I would assume. So basically, it's I'm just inquiring about removing the shoulder rumble strips, as I feel the transverse rumble strips are meeting the objective of minimizing the accidents and giving the pedestrians and cyclists a safe space to travel. That's it.
Thank you. Council, may I have a mover and seconder to receive it before we have questions? Councilors Moore and Fisher, that the delegation from Tim Light regarding the St. Vincent Street paved shoulder rumble strips between Midhurst and Barrie be received. Are there any questions for the resident, Mr. Light? Councilor Fisher?
I live in Ward 5, so I'm very familiar. I travel on a daily basis on that street. I can tell you the rumble strips, we have seen fewer accidents and people going in the ditch. Sort of silly it takes rumble strips to do it, but it has seemed to have an effect. I don't know that it sees a lot of cyclist traffic. As a matter of fact, I reached out to a staff member yesterday, and he told me 10 to 15 a day is what they tracked in the height of the summer. I feel, and I'm certainly not on the roads crew, but I feel that to cover up the rumble strips that are on the side all the way through those corners would be very costly. I would propose that, if we're ever looking to repave that road, we maybe widen the shoulders. But as for, I think the greater good is served in keeping the rumble strips in those corners as they were originally intended. And I think they've met their objective as well.
Thank you, Councilor Fisher. Any other comments from council? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much for joining us.
Can I add a couple comments to that?
We've already moved and seconded to move on to the next, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
I will now call upon Alexia Egregious and Dave. I'm getting all of these wrong tonight. Alexia and Dave, I'm just going to go with that. To present. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation? I have Councillors Thompson and Moore come on forward, and if you just pull the microphones, and if you could pronounce your names, and then that way I'll get it. Wow, there's a better chance I will get it right on.
So my name is Alexia Agaridas, and I'm here with my colleague Dave Keegstra. Thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. We're here on behalf of Swoop Fiber. So we just came, our objective here today is just to kind of make a face for ourselves and meet everyone here today. We can skip to the next slide. I don't know who's controlling it, but okay, perfect. So we're here today to tell you a little bit about Swoop Fiber, as you may see our trucks in the area soon. So we're a true fiber internet provider. And so what that means is we're providing 100% fiber, not coax, not copper. And I'll explain a little bit about the benefits of that later. But we are delivering high-speed internet to Elmvale, and Elmvale is our pilot project here at Swoop Fiber. We can skip to the next slide. So what is the benefit of actual fiber instead of coax or copper? We can offer a direct connection that doesn't have consistency problems depending on the network traffic. It has faster and more reliable speeds, less interference, and it's really just known as superior to copper or coax, which is a combination of fiber and copper. We can skip to the next slide. So why are we here today in person? Especially, we really want to get to know the community. We're not here to try and change the community. We're not here to try and move things around. We're here to become an active participant in the community and get to know the communities that we work in. So we're more than a service provider. We want to be a positive impact community partner here in Elmvale. And so what does that mean to us? Some of our mandates here at Swoop Fiber, we really want to give back to the community. We want to participate. We want to hear community feedback. So we want to attend events. So we're going to be at the Fall Fair, for example. We want to co-host events with local business. And as I mentioned, this community feedback sessions. We also want to boost economic development. So we want to have that digital access for all. So in certain zones, we're going to have free internet, free Wi-Fi zones. We also want to give back. So down the road, we're looking at doing some sponsorships, whether that's sports, charities, educational grants, and whatnot. And we want to hear from the community of what those things might look like and what is needed. We can go to the next slide. So what does our timeline here look like? You may start seeing our trucks very soon. Our construction is beginning ideally next week. Dave might have a better idea of that, but we've already started doing our door-to-door education, kind of letting the community know that we're going to be coming in. We're aiming for our launch of our network in late October to early November, just depending if we're able to get through some of the roadblocks. And moving on after our launch, of course, we want that community feedback. We want those first people who join our network to be able to tell us what they need, what they want, how it's going, and then ongoing feedback and community involvement. We can go to the next slide, please. So some of the economic benefits, because we really do want to have an impact in the communities that we are in. So support for local businesses as well as remote work opportunities. We want to make sure that Elmvale and Springwater can be grounds for new businesses. If people have ideas, they want to expand maybe their own businesses, as well as create remote work opportunities, reduce traffic congestion and commuting, improve quality of life with that high-speed internet so people have more opportunities, as well as maybe getting smart city status down the road, with Elmvale being one of the first rural communities in North America to achieve that smart city status. So working together to kind of just boost the economy and listen to what the residents want to improve. We can go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we really want to harp on is a lot of telecom companies have a bad reputation. They're not trustworthy. They, are seen as not really caring about customer service. We want to change that. So our core objective here is to build trust. And that's also why we want to meet in person. We want to emphasize that two-way communication with all the stakeholders. So whether that's businesses, residents, council, whoever it may be, and we're committed to that transparency and community welfare. We can go to the next slide, please. And as I kind of mentioned, that's really big. We want to change the narrative, grow alongside the community, ensuring the mutual benefits and shared success. So because Elmvale is our pilot project, the success of Elmville really is our success too. We're not just here to make profits and just kind of go on. If this is a success, we of course want to grow outside of Elmville, but it really is a pivotal project for us. So customer service is our top priority, and that customer satisfaction is directly tied to our growth. Next slide, please. So some of our goals here are, of course, just creating that environment where we can foster that lasting relationship. Elmville as a pilot and a new standard of service, and then becoming that community partner through the other ways that I've mentioned. So before we go, I will pass it along to Dave, who wants to chat with the council today. So Dave, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, well, I should mention that we own Elmville Storage. So we have a business in the community as well. And there's other things we want to do there. But one of our issues is we want internet access, better internet access there too. So we thought, being part of the community, we should probably do something about that. So build it ourselves. The experiment is to be able to build a small town, about 1,200 homes passed, and make it a good business. In other words, have a return on investment. And we think, because we have construction, design, and all the network back to Barrie. Actually, we're using a eStructure data center in Barrie as our internet exchange location. We think we can actually build a place like Elmville and make it something that's economically viable, which is hard for big companies to do, right? They need a certain size, a certain number of homes passed. So we've been working with your engineering department. We've done the designs. We've submitted the designs. We've got municipal consent on a couple of them. We're waiting on 2 more. We're waiting for construction to be done on the streets on one of them, and the other one we just submitted. And we're actually starting the designs to go to Orr Lake right now. So that's our next location. I am having problems getting across the Wee River. So I've spent about 5 months trying to figure out how I'm going to get across it. So I'm going to work with Jeff and Scott Haw to figure that out. I'm hoping I don't need easements. I'm hoping I don't need to have to come here and ask for approval. But that's my current critical path, I guess, is to get across the river. I'm putting my telecom shelter in the Elmville storage location just because it's our location. And to get to the rest of town, I have to get across the river. So that's one challenge. And I may have to be here again to ask for help to get approval to go across the river. And we're trying to go aerial and keep it so that I don't have to go underneath it and involve the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority. But yeah, that's our goal right now. So that's the experiment. We are also going to do wireless downtown in the main street. We're going to do fixed wireless to the businesses. So we're not going to dig up the streets there or be putting any directional drilling there. We're going to get into experimenting with some sensors and stuff to perhaps like Alexia was saying, getting into smart city. And the nice thing about the technology for fiber, construction is about 70% of the cost. And the labor of construction is about 70% of the cost. The actual technology and the active equipment, the routers, all that stuff.
I'm just going to give you your 2-minute warning here.
It's gone down a lot in price. Like it scales down very well now. And that's what we're trying to take advantage of. But because we also have a construction side of our business, we're trying to take advantage of the efficiencies there to keep the costs down.
Perfect.
That's it.
That's great. Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Yeah, Councillor Garwood and Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin and Mr. Kingstra. Nice to meet face to face. I know we've spoke a bit on the phone. Just a few questions. I won't ask them all at once. I'll let others jump in as well. But can you speak a bit about the door-to-door education aspect? I know that was mentioned in the presentation. What that looks like. I know you mentioned a bit of timeline. You know, how many homes within the community is the plan, and up until when? Thank you.
I could talk a little bit about the door-to-door education. So right now, we're not having anyone, sign on to our plans or anything like that. We just want people to be aware of what's going on in the communities. We don't want to just show up with construction crews and start digging up things without people knowing, because that creates a very bad impression of us. So we want people to know what's going on and have the option too of learning more if they want to, telling us, hey, no, I'm not interested in having this part of my property line. So we're just kind of getting to know the community, getting them to know who we are so that they don't just see some construction people in their, in their roads. So that's really what our door-to-door education is about right now, just really telling people who we are, what we're doing, explaining to them why we're there. And so far, we've actually had a really positive, we've had positive feedback of people who may not even need that high-speed internet, some of them, but they're happy that we're doing it for some of the families in the area and things like that. So even those who may not want it, we've had pretty good feedback. And then do you mind repeating some of the other parts of your question? Okay, thank you. No worries.
Councillor Fisher.
I just wonder, you mentioned like smart city a little bit. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about what that is for myself as well. I'm not really sure. And the second part to the question would be profitability, shorter term to profitability was mentioned versus some of the other larger companies out there. I guess my question would be, when do you foresee that happening? And the reason I asked the question is, if you're putting a lot of this infrastructure in a place like Elmvale, are you sustainable? Are you there to last?
I can answer the smart city component. So in the past, we've worked with a lot of different cities trying to implement smart city technology. And so when Dave mentioned sensors, that's things like monitoring the network, for example. So putting sensors in so that we know exactly if an area goes down, we immediately have that notify our systems, not only notify our systems, but for example, generate a work order so that someone can come and fix it right away without people having to call in and say, oh, wow, my internet is down. Or in the future, right, there's sensors for all types of things, whether that's power, internet. So in the past, we have systems that we've implemented that are not just telecommunications, but kind of getting towards that smart city. That doesn't necessarily mean, the city, everything is high tech and everything. We have, parking sensors everywhere, but it just means having a city that is better for the residents, easier, less reporting, less communication, more digitization. So maybe that even means less paperwork for the administrators of the city. So having digitized services, digitized forms, having people be able to do things with a little bit more ease. The profitability part. Do you want to talk about that, Dave? Or
yeah, I mean, again, like I say, the technology has scaled down from the active equipment. Construction is really the most expensive upfront thing, and because we are a construction company, we get some efficiencies there. We think that in a year to 2 years, we can have a return on the capital investment, depending on our penetration. So everything depends on penetration. And but yeah, because we're a company about 500 employees, the sustaining and monitoring and network operations we already have. So we're planning to be in this for quite a while. And we will expand like to Orr Lake, then we'll probably go up to Wyville, which is in Tiny Township, and maybe a crossover to Wasaga Beach and then up along the beach. So when you look at the total area, there's about 12,000 homes passed that we are looking at. If we can get 60 to 70% penetration, that's pretty good economics for us.
Anything further? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you. Where would your main connection be then? Because I know some of the point-to-point folks are out on the beach. And I don't know how it would work in Elmvale, but from what I've heard, you will be installing the fiber yourself. You're not going to be buying broadband and then reselling it. So I was curious, one, where your actual connection would be. And the second one is in respect of your door-to-door sales. I actually did get a call regarding same and reached out to staff about it because at that particular time, I'm going back probably a few weeks now at least. There was some kind of confusion as to whether or not Springwater Council itself was supporting your initiative. And at that time, I had absolutely no idea who you guys even were. So just to be certain that that's not the case going forward, because unless council does turn around and endorse it, I don't think that that would be a reasonable thing to be telling your customers. That would be my only concern there. So
Absolutely. Do you mind just telling us what was said so that we can
basically in a nutshell, what was said was that the company was coming into town. It had been endorsed by Springwater Council, and it was going to be beneficial to the businesses and whatnot in Elmvale. Now, it wasn't a whole slew of people that reached out to me, but it was someone who wanted to know, hey, what's going on? And
I see. Okay, well, apologies for that. That was never our intention for that to, we know for sure we haven't had any official endorsement, and we've been chatting back and forth to try and get perhaps, a letter of not necessarily endorsement, but just saying that our plans have been approved by the township to come in. And we know that that is not the case. So that's never been in any of our official marketing language. So I apologize for that, and definitely will make sure that that does not happen again.
Yeah, don't let Charles.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, as far as the main
Councillor
connection,
Garwood? Oh, my apologies.
as far as the main connection, so our telecom shelter will have where everybody will connect to is on the Elmville storage property. We have to connect to Barrie data center to get to the internet exchange, and we're doing that through Rogers.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And my last question for tonight would be, you had mentioned wireless downtown. So in addition to setting up here, I'm also on our BIA in our community, and our BIA meets tomorrow. So I know I will be hounded if I don't ask. Can you just give a little bit more of information specifically around what that wireless downtown looks like, and what your vision is for that, and how that would benefit businesses that are currently in Elmvale, but potentially attract more into the future?
Yes, so the reason we went wireless just in a little bit of area downtown is we didn't want to have to dig up anything. It's a little more difficult that way. So we are connecting a wireless base station to the fiber that goes back to our telecom shelter. We are using not to get too technical, it's not 5G. 5G is kind of a marketing term, but this is what we call millimeter wave technology. It's 60 gigahertz. It's a point to multi-point technology. We are talking to the owner of Steelers to have the base station there. And then what we can do is have direct line of sights to different businesses along the main street. And each one of them will receive a little radio that'll connect back to the base station, and you can get up to a gigabit per second up and down. And that way it's quicker, and we're not running cables all over the place. You're not, you're keeping it wireless. It's low power, so there's not going to be any safety code 6 issues that you have with the big towers that you see. It's line of sight. So we're not going to go 2 kilometers. We'll be going 250 meters, right? And then that way it's much less evasive to the downtown, and it's quicker to set up.
That's great. Thank you very much. Seeing any more hands, I did have this moved by Councillors Thompson and Moore, that the delegation from the delegation as an introduction to Swoop Fiber be received. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much for bringing this to us.
Thanks so much. Nice to meet you all.
Yep, thank you.
Oh, Okay. CEO Schmidt, we don't have anything on the table, but Deputy Cabral has a question for you while I ask for the CAO Hebner to come forward for the MVCA.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. I'm just curious to know, is this the type of thing that we'll be able to post quickly on the site, or is there more information to come? Just
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, further to the email that you'd sent to me, and we did reach out and we've had discussions with the team at Swoop Fiber. And the idea is that, again, we indicated that, it would be up to Township Council to obviously provide for any advocacy, because not something that we would typically do. But we would allow them to essentially provide further information on our webpage, similar to other providers. So we have arranged for that. And I believe if it hasn't been updated, it will be updated shortly on our website to provide for that.
Fantastic. We're now moving on to the NBC. We have CAO Hebner, and I'm sorry, I don't have.
Sorry, my name is Kyra Howes. I'm the Director of Conservation Services.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, Chris Hibbard, who was supposed to be here, was sick.
Oh, well, thank you very much for being here. Please begin.
Through your worship, if I may, it's a pleasure to be here to address council and those that are left in the crowd and staff as well, Jeff and team. I asked Kyra to be here when Chris couldn't come to take this as an opportunity. You're all familiar with Byron Wesson, who spent a 35-year career with the NVCA. Kyra worked hand in hand with Byron as the manager under him for 10 years, and she has become the new director of our conservation services. So it's an opportunity for Kyra to meet with you. She liaises with Jeff and has worked with a lot of your staff, especially just recently as we're getting ready to do our Fort Willow Festival, and we work quite actively with your staff to do that. So thank you on that. If I could have the next slide, please. I just want to show a little here. There's a few new councillors on the area. This is an overlay map showing the tributaries and rivers that run from the escarpment areas, the Oro Moraine, the Oak Ridges Moraine, the Barrie Highlands, down into what is the Nottawasaga Valley. And it's a northern watershed that runs from the southern ends near Caledon in the Oak Ridges Moraine to Georgian Bay. The fishery in this area is part of the Great Lakes fishery, which is a $7 billion fishery industry and something that's very important. So we work with 18 municipal partners. We practice integrated watershed management. We are a valley topography, as I've mentioned, and a riverine system, northern flowing. And as you all know, we're facing rapidly changing population numbers. We work in Dufferin, Grey, a portion of Peel, and Simcoe counties. And the biggest challenge that we face in this next decade is a need to balance agriculture, development, growth, and the environment. You see that every day in the newspaper, and I think we're all aware of that. Next slide, please. We were established 63 years ago. The conservation authorities worked under the Provincial Conservation Authorities Act. I think we would have to have been in a dark cave somewhere if we don't know that the conservation authorities have gone through several changes since 2018, the departure of the Liberal government and the advent of the Conservative government coming in. They've really looked at the act and really looked at identifying some of the original terminology, the core work of conservation authorities, now referred to as Category 1 work. So we practice this integrated management of natural hazards and the conservation of natural resources. And we have a large catchment of over 3,700 square kilometers in area. Next slide, please. So our lands operations, we work in Springwater. We own approximately 3,100 acres of land in the area, the largest portion of that being in the Minising Wetlands area. We are just now taking back one of our conservation areas in Edenville. And that's one of the reasons you'll move out of having no MOU for Category 2. It would have been in place if we continued to do that. We've been working with Jeff and staff to transition that. That will happen in the fiscal year of 2024. So that you have to meet that standard. As I mentioned earlier, historic Fort Willow is a really nice site that we have on our area. It's along the trail system, the Portage Trail system. We are doing a reenactment of 1812, really well populated. And it's an opportunity to talk about Category 3 aspects of there in education. We have over 10 townships that come and participate in that. For this particular year, we have 125 students coming from schools in Springwater. So it looks at how that levy funding apportioned across 18 municipalities helps to deliver this to a broader range of people. And hopefully with education as we see fit, it's educating people across the watershed that may at some point decide to come and live in another part of the different municipality and possibly pick Springwater as that place to live. Next slide, please. This is an important part of the work that we do, stewardship and ecological restoration. We are a riverine system. It's what drives the Nottawasaga Valley. One of the most incredible salmonoid fisheries in all of Canada. The non-indigenous fish, the Chinook salmon that's here, is now spawning all the way down into the Agilitas Basin in the Oak Ridges Moraine. Here we have a picture of some of the restoration work we're doing. Again, this talks to what Category 1 does for Category 2 and 3. We take levy, for example, in 2022, $150,000 in levy from 18 municipalities. And this program spends over $1 million in deliverable services to our municipal partners, like a 1 to 5. So we're accentuating or amplifying that money. We use that money to prepare plans, to assist in having us write grants. Historically, in the past, 49% of our funding comes from our 18 municipal partners. We then turn around and match that with 49% funding what we raise through grants. But we need to have seed money to do that. And that's what the levy acts as for us. For example, how this can help and benefit conservation authorities' work in the overall townships and the community good of the integrated watershed. We're doing a project in Napoleon that we're working on Hydro One property to try to protect the water along the edge of a hydro corridor, so beneficial to the delivery of and the safety of homes. And in the same breath, we're working with the Midhurst development that's working to offset phosphorus. So we're going to generate a $308,000 spend in that area that is going to amplify and benefit all the downstream activities. Like we're reducing that phosphorus into the system. We're working with the sewage systems that are coming into the Nottawasaga River, into that pristine wetland in the Minising wetland, and down into Wasaga Beach. And again, supporting that fishery. When we get into the Minising, it's one of the largest spawning grounds for our, sorry, help me with the fish. No. Sturgeon, sorry, brain fart there. The freshwater sturgeon in all of North America. So we have some wonderful things, and Springwater has some gems, and the environment is very, very important. And that's the portion that Category 3 plays in that role. Next slide, please. Private land plantings and forests. You work with another agency, the Severn Sound Agency, and they do tree planting in their areas. They don't do tree planting through the Ministry of Natural Resources MTIP programs. So a landowner could take their land and they could put it into a 40-year managed forest plan, and they could receive a tax break on that. The equivalent tax break to an agricultural operator. And when we look at that, I think it's important to know that, you know, when you look at the equivalent economies of scale, a 40-year rotation of soybeans and corn is the equivalent amount of a 40-year registered forest when you're harvesting timber. But when we look at 40 years of the inputs that go into a commercial agricultural operation, synthetic fertilizers, phosphorus-based fertilizers, nitrate-based fertilizers, versus what goes into growing the tree is restoring and delivering back an organic-based soil that's much different than what the agricultural land is. So it's a hard argument to understand that because I plant a forest, I'm taking tax dollars away from communities. I don't think you are. I think you're building communities by planting trees and working with agriculture in the appropriate areas to continue to grow plants and raise food.
So you have there's 2 minutes
Yep,
left
that's
and
fine.
quite
Next
a few
slide,
slides.
please. Our watershed science program is the program where we monitor. You've seen us in the past. You've seen our watershed report cards, and you know that we do septic systems and we work with sewage systems. We work in monitoring ponds for phosphorus and different chemical aspects that are in it. And again, the source water protection. Next slide, please. I touched a little bit on the education program. Overall, in the entire watershed, we educate between 12 and 14,000 kids a year, and those kids grow up to be homeowners and they live across the entire watershed. We do that primarily from in Simcoe County for the grade 4 curriculum. We deliver curriculum for Simcoe County schools, public schools, and Simcoe County Catholic School Board, as well as working with homeschool situations as well. Next slide, please. Other activities, we manage databases that support your flood protection and work. We work with the MNRNF, we work with MECP, we work with other land-based users. We gather that data and we use it to share with your staff and develop ideas and concepts to evaluate plans. Next slide, please. Here tonight, the memorandums of understanding. This was a challenge that was brought forward by the Ford government for us to better understand and provide accountability. I think that's one thing that your council has asked of me in the past when we've come. We want to understand your costs. So we've broken them out into categories 1, 2, and 3. If you could go to the next slide, please. And here they are, the mandatory programs. And in the next slide, we'll break that out even in more detail. But those were the core aspects here: watershed monitoring, drinking, source water protection. You can read the litany of programs that they are. Category 3 is the next slide, please. Sorry, that's a breakdown of the category 3 costs right here, and per capita per user in the watershed. Category 1 works out to 13 of the $14 or $15.71, and category 2 works out to $1.58 per resident in those costs. I've broken out the levy aspects. These are our numbers that we're working with, developing a budget for 2024. You can see the spring water levy charges breaking out into these category 3 programs, and then the overall levy charges, what percentages you would pay on that in the far column. Next slide, please. That just breaks that into a pie chart for you, and you can get an idea of what it is. But when you look at the education component, 8 cents. It's 8 cents per resident. If you look at this as $1.58, it's a chocolate bar for every member of the family once a year, is what the component is to deliver category 3 programming. But category 3 programming reduces category 1 costs. It augments them, and it generates revenue for the overall good of all of the watershed members that we participate with. And I'm happy to entertain any questions if you have some, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, CM Hammer. I'm going to have this put on the floor, so a mover and seconder to receive it before we have any questions. Deputy Cabral and Councillor Thompson, the delegation from Doug Hebner regarding the Springwater / NVCA Memorandum of Understanding be received. And at this time, I can have questions from members of council. Councillor Fisher.
Just wonder, actually, I found your forestry management explanation quite interesting. But you know, we do Springwater is very agricultural. I actually sit on the agricultural board. So and I can assure you we wouldn't be switching fields out for forests. You know, it's productive land. Can you explain if you do at all work with agriculture and farmers? And you talked about phosphorus loading and things like this. Could you speak briefly to that?
We work.
CEO Hebner.
Sorry, through the mayor, if I may. We work closely through an agriculture advisory committee. We have members from Grey County, we have members from Dufferin County, and members from Simcoe County. Donna Jebb is our chair. Dave Ritchie participates on our group. Colin Elliott has been a long time standing member of our group. So we do work that way. We go as far south as to the Bradford Marsh area. The executive director is on our board. So we're trying to go north, south, east, west across the watershed. When we do forestry plantings, and we really do keep in mind what agriculture is and how important it is to Simcoe County. 70% of Simcoe County is agriculture. It's a big player. We're identifying additional strips to buffers. We're making wetland protection areas. We're not going into class 1, class 2, class 3 land and flooding the whole thing with 100,000 trees in one spot. Small incremental average, 6,000 trees per planting kind of average. Historically, around the 100 to 120,000 trees are planted across our watershed each year. Highs might be 250,000. In our current forester's career of over some 25 years, he's planted over 2 million trees in Simcoe, Dufferin, and Grey. It's an important part, but we're working with agriculture to do that.
Oh, Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Mr. Hefner. Are you going to be coming forward again to us at budget time? I'm assuming you will be. And when you do come this time, are you going to be separating out your category 1, 2, and 3 asks? Or we're getting one lump sum per usual? I want to know if we're going to have an opportunity to speak to those 3.
Sure.
Thank you.
CEO Hebner?
Through the mayor, if I may. That's what we have just presented at our last board meeting to our board. They gave us the threshold to work under to deliver a budget. We're delivering a budget on Friday of this week. It will come out to you for 60 days. We've identified category 1 costs. They're all outlined. You can specifically see them. There's no input from any municipalities. The government has directed these are the things that you have to deliver. The memorandum of understanding is set up if we use a category 3 program, our category 2 program, where we have in place a jointly agreed upon municipal NVCA want to do this. We want to go into an agreement to do it, and we want to apportion the costs for it. We don't have any of those with you right now. Category 3 programs, the key ones, agriculture, monitoring, the education piece, forestry, events, those are the key items. You can look at those costs, you can discern. Right now, we've worked with 18 municipalities. We have 8 signed MOUs as we have presented the MOU to you in council. We have 3 of our 18 members that are considering selecting some of the category 3 programs. Example, in Mulmer, they don't participate in the educational program. They have a Grand Valley, which is right beside them on the western side of their watershed, that has a tremendous educational program. It's not for wanting. We've gone there and we've worked with as many as 300 students at a time. It just, the economics aren't there, bus travel and such. So that's one of the things they're looking at doing, but they're looking at supporting our forestry and supporting our water resources and that. So it's a pick and choose type of thing. Do we have the remainder of the groups have expressed to us that they're taking staff reports forward in September, October, November of this year. It's challenging for us because October 1st is the drop dead date to ask for an extension on these MOUs. Jeff and I have had a lot of dialogue over the summer. Actually, one of the first CAOs that jumped in and started to have this dialogue. So there's been a lot of talk behind the scenes before we've come to council. But you will definitely be able to discern category 1, category 2, category 3. And that will also look at your capital investment for maintenance along our typical 10-year plan for capital. It rationalizes it as in a category 1, category 2, category 3 as well. Welcome.
Thank you. And before I do carry on, CAO Schmidt, the opportunity to just determine the MOU agreement that will come before our service partner as portion of our budget. Will this be done separate from the budget process or as part?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, essentially this evening's presentation was to outline kind of that process and the request, I guess, for an MOU. Really, it's up to council to provide direction to staff as to how you wish to proceed. It's my understanding, and CEO Hebner and I've had this discussion. Maybe a little difference of opinion on the category 1 piece. So, in discussions with some of my colleagues, my understanding is if council wishes to just entertain category 1 services, the mandated services, my understanding is you do not have to entertain an MOU, and that's a further dialogue that Mr. Hebner and I can have. If you wish to entertain a category 2, that is when an MOU would be required. And my understanding is also if you wish to continue with category 3 services, that a cost apportionment agreement would need to be entertained between or executed between the two parties. So to answer your question, Mayor Coughlin, unless directed by council, I don't plan on bringing forward a report at this stage, to be quite honest with you. I'll take direction from council as to how you wish staff to proceed on this.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I wanted to thank you both for being here this evening. I absolutely respect what you do. While you're here, I'm going to take an opportunity to ask you a question. I'm sure you get it every municipality you go to. I'm on your website right now, and I'm looking at planning and permits. And something typically that I think many members of council here at this table, right, is I'm not hearing back from the MVCA. Right? When am I going to get that answer? And I'm reading right now, it says it typically takes 30 to 90 days to review and complete an application, and your application will be reviewed within 21 days. So is it the NVCA's stance still that you are meeting that expectation of 30 to 90 days? And secondary to that, is there a desire potentially in the future to even tighten that up, understanding, I've been dealing with residents that have waited longer than 90 days. Thank you.
CEO Hebner?
Through the mayor, if I may, that's the question I get asked every day. Thank you for asking. The threshold of 90 days is a government threshold. It targets planning. The challenge with this is it isn't 90 days. It's 90 days that we have the document in hand and we're working on it. So if we send out our comments to the proponent's consultant and they take 6 months to get back to us, that's going to kill up 90 days really fast. But the clock's not on like that. That's something that isn't understood easily by the proponent, the homeowner proponent. Another challenge is that because I'm ultimately the person that talks to these people on the phone. I'm the last. We're hearing no, we're not getting a response, we're not getting things back. So I had one today in situation. We have been without 3 engineers since January. So I have 1 engineer that's doing 18 municipalities. So there's no way in a prayer that we can do that. So we have tried to, on our website, say that we're experiencing a backlog. We have to get through the backlog. We have to hire staff to do this. And the 90-day threshold is going to be a challenge in many cases. Our last evaluation of it in 2022, we were hitting 60 days with a 92% threshold and our 98% threshold, and 90 days with a 8% threshold, or 98% threshold. So we're making it, but you get to hear it because people say no to people like you. They don't come and tell you, hey, permit flew out the door, we got the permit. They come and tell you when it doesn't happen. And that's the 8 to 10% threshold that we have. I think we could probably throw a dozen more engineers in the game and we'd probably still have that threshold, because it isn't always about get it in, get it out. It's the complexity of a file. And the other thing is when that engineer goes out to deal with a non-compliance or the regulations officer, they're not reviewing permits. It just completely stops. When they go to an OLT, it stops. When we go to court, it stops. And we have 3 engineers and we have 3 regulations people. So if it's not high math, like, to understand how it can be problematic, we're trying to take steps to do that. We've expended quite a bit of our own resources with Watson, and we've done a complete evaluation of all of our breakdowns. Where are we falling apart? What do we need to do? How can we correct the situation? We presented that to our board, and the budget that we're going to deliver will take that in consideration in the acquisition of additional staff to try to fight this problem. So that's really all I can say for it.
And follow on, and then I have comment.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Just more of a comment. And again, thank you for answering the question. I know it's a tough one, and I know you get it asked all the time. I just want to make a comment in regards to, that 8 to 10% of those residents, right? Those are often the folks, right, that absolutely do come to members of council, but that's our job to work with those folks, right? That's our job to be able to provide them information. I'm not going to go back to my residents and say, well, the MVCA hasn't hired 2 engineers, right? They're not going to accept that. I don't accept that. So I think maybe that's where the disconnect is and my personal frustration comes with. But again, I appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.
Through the mayor, if I may. I'm here. You see my face. My phone number's on the website. The only person in your council that I've ever spoken to is your mayor on a permitting problem. If you're experiencing those, please reach out. Please. We can at least we can ask the question, hey, where's this file? In the 6 years that I've been here, we've had 4 files that have just basically disappeared. They didn't land in the UNC monitoring. They didn't hit the file. They hit the ground somewhere and nobody knew. But unless you ask, we can't seek the answer. And so it's vital. That's the part of the role that I think you as councillors can play. If you're not getting the service you're requiring from the MVCA, please reach out to me.
Thank you, CEO Hedmer. And you're correct. I have been reaching it for many years. When we're speaking about a backlog, and having to hire more staff in order to take over that backlog. Has there been any consideration? I know that there is a do not permit list. So instead of things
Excuse me,
that
I'm sorry.
CA Hunter. So for things in our municipality that maybe not just our municipality that may not require the MVCA permit, has there been consideration to maybe not doing pool permits, or if someone's septic fails and they are simply rebuilding a septic, the MVCA doesn't come back out and inspect that septic. So why is there a permit if it's a rebuild? I understand for new builds, you would need to do that. So is there an opportunity to maybe look at maybe the hands are in too many different things and these backlogs to have progress moving is being backlogged by maybe there's too many items that the MVCA is involved in?
Through the mayor, if I may respond to that. We're responding to the regulatory authority that we're supposed to advise on. That's if they took that away, we wouldn't respond on it. We only respond to the regulatory authority we do in as far as a permit aspect goes. We're not looking outside the box or trying to find other situations or scenarios. So it's like, if you want to change what we do, it's done through legislation and then the regulation that follows that legislation. And that's how it changes. Then we change the process that we provide to the citizen.
And I definitely have been advocating for that. But the question would be then, is there an opportunity for the conservation authorities to go to their own ministry and say, I think maybe we need to refocus? Has that been a conversation coming from the board or the conservation authority themselves?
Through the mayor, if I may, that is what we did from 2018 until the second term of the Ford government, when Premier Ford removed it. It was the integrated community of AMO, municipal members and CAs working together to try to find the best way to manage this whole mess. I guess I'll say the other word, the whole environmental issue. We all face the fact that there's going to be a need for housing and a need for cost-effective housing in a timely fashion. And that's what we strive to do. But the premier basically tossed that one out the window. There hasn't been any actionable work done on that collectively by all those parties that are all same interested to move forward. So yes, we have definitely acted in that space.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Mr. Hebner again. I'm still trying to understand the category 2 piece. Does the historic Fort Willow fall under the category 2 or category 1?
Through the mayor, if I may, category 3.
3.
Yes.
So if we don't enter into an MOU with you with a category 3 budget, what does that look like for historic Fort Willow?
What it'll look like, it is a total reassessment of our budget and how we spend our dollars. You'll see programming stop. If we have, for example, I mentioned 3 municipalities that are not 100% decided on fully funding our work. If we have 15 that are, we'll look at that revenue that's generated from that 15, and we'll use that to run that programming. For example, if you had kids that come to do education at Tiffin Center and you're not supporting our education program, any resident in Springwater Township would pay a surcharge to access and utilize those programs. Not very different from if you were going to attend a conference and you were a member of the organization hosting the conference, you pay $125. If you're a non-member and you want to attend the conference, you pay $175.
I see.
That's the type of things that could possibly happen.
So potentially we would be paying a fee to get into the Fort Willow in a month or something like that, instead of it being free for everybody. I see. So then are you looking for us at the moment to ask the CAO to come back to us with a report on what category 2 and 3 would look like? Because I would certainly ask for that. So there's clarification moving forward. I would need some additional information than what's been provided today to make a decision on yay or nay. Thank you.
I'm just typing here. Are there any other questions for CAO Hebner? CAO Hebner.
Sorry, through the mayor, if I may. You made the phrase, what is our expectation or what are we looking for? what we're looking for is support of our category 3 programs. That's what we're looking for. The category 3 programs drive the category 1 programming that we do and we deliver. I referenced stewardship. That category 3 funding that supports stewardship is $150,000 split between 18 municipalities. And by doing that, we fund work for over $1 million for the greater good of the watershed. And you have to look, that's the thing. You're looking at it as a mosaic of 18 municipalities and what's best for your municipality. And I certainly grasp and understand that. Our team is looking at that. The isthmus is the Oak Ridges Moraine. That water travels through. It affects all of these situations. What's the good for the greater good? What's the best direction for the greater good? And that best management has been decided 75 years ago, integrated watershed management. You have to think about what's good downstream and what's good upstream. That's the whole concept and the whole ethos of conservation management in our province. What we saw in British Columbia just recently, the flooding, guess who they turned to? Conservation authorities in Ontario. We had a team ready to go to British Columbia to assist. In fact, in 2024, they're putting a system in place very similar to how conservation authorities operate. I lived and worked in the United States for 30 years. And the conservation authorities in Ontario were the envy of the state of Michigan, where I work, the state of New York, where I work, the state of Florida, where I work, the state of North Dakota. It's a really great system. It really is. And it looks after the economy. It looks after the environment. It looks after the housing. And that's what we're here for. And sometimes it gets lost.
And then I guess Councillor Moore, it says that staff be directed to provide a report outlining category 2 and category 3 services for council's consideration. And I know that this is accepting from the NBCA, but I think in that report, I understand that we do have services provided by the SSEA that do mimic those category 2 and 3. I think it's important for this council to see if we don't receive this service from the NBCA, is it something that the SSEA does provide? So if we could just have that added on. So we have an amendment to the motion moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Garwood. That staff be directed to provide a report outlining category 2 and 3 services for council's consideration, including information regarding potential services provided by the SSEA. So that is the amendment. All those in favor? Thank you. And if there's no further questions for CEO Hebner, this time, may I have a mover and seconder? I have the original one, yes. That the delegation from Doug Hebner regarding Springwater and the NBCA Memorandum of Understanding be received as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. And we're just going to take a quick break. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for your time. Have a lovely evening.
At this time, we're moving on to our question period. Members of public are invited to ask questions of council and make comments regarding an item on the agenda. Questions not on the agenda are at the discretion of the chair. In order to accommodate the registration process for oral presentations, submissions are to be accepted until 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. In accordance with the procedural bylaw, the first 5 submissions will be accepted in order they have been received. Clerk Ainsworth, has there been any submissions received?
There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
Council, may I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the minutes? Councillors Fisher and Deputy Cabral, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. 1, minutes of the regular meeting of council of September 6, 2023. 2, minutes of the special meeting of council of September 6, 2023. And 3 minutes of the special meeting of council closed session for September 6, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. All right, and at this time, I will need to pass the chair as I am presenting a letter from the SSEA.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. May I have a mover and seconder to support the letter to the SSEA? Moved by Mayor Coughlin, seconded by nobody seconding it.
Just it fails.
It fails. It's lost. Thank you.
Is it still on the floor? And then before I do move on, the intent of this letter, I didn't actually need a resolution of council to put my signature on it. It was just to ask for council's endorsement in it. So moving forward, I just won't put it on the agenda. I will just sign it from now on. So my apologies for taking up everyone's time. May I have a mover and seconder for the appointment to the NVCA Board of Directors? I need a mover and seconder. Councillors Fisher and Deputy Cabral. That council for the Township of Springwater hereby appoint the following member of council to the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority Board of Directors. And I need someone to, is there any interest from members of council? So I can just put a name in there. Councillors Thompson and Fisher. And so I would ask for someone to move and second a nomination. Or if each of you wanted to speak to it, simply up to you. Councillor Fisher.
I have some interest in it if the seat's open. One of the main reasons, frankly, I do sit on the agricultural board, and I think that there is some sort of conservancy, frankly, and I think that often we think of conservancy like the gentleman mentioned tonight, and planting trees and this type of thing. But I think that because such a large portion of Springwater is agricultural, I think I'd be suited and frankly interested in that. I also think if there's any troubles with the NVCA, I'd like to tackle it, and so that's where my interest lies, but I like the fact that there are other members that are interested as well.
All right. And the meetings are during the day on Fridays. So you'd have to take time. Just being mindful of your employment.
It's once a month, I believe.
Yeah.
It's once a month. I believe I can, to be in all honesty, and I thank you for bringing that up. Once a month, I would be able to make it work.
Councillor Thompson.
I could support Councillor Fisher. I'd be happy to support him in that endeavor and withdraw my interest.
I was going for rock, paper, scissors and I'm on it, guys. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Fisher. So I do have a mover and seconder that council for the Township of Springwater hereby appoint the following member of council to the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority Board of Directors, Councillor Fisher. Any other comments or questions? And seeing none, all those in favor, and that has carried. I need a mover and seconder to approve the action reports. We'll pull them as we go along here. So I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral that action reports 11 point, and to pull, we've had 2, 3, and 4 pulled and 5. So why don't we just deal with all of them separately? That would make sense. We're going to move on to number 1. So we have 11.2 council discretionary fund. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the policy? Councillors Fisher and Moore, that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the council discretionary funds policy dated September 20th, 2023 be received and that a bylaw be presented to council for consideration and approval of the September 20th, 2023 council meeting. The discussion on this was pulled by Councillor Thompson.
Through to the chair to Director Radigan, just a couple of questions. One is, even though this policy hasn't been approved, it still has counted against our 2023 budget, number one. And number two, that if tonight we voted not to adopt this policy, would that mean that it would not be included in 2024 budget?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Thompson. At the moment, it is included in your 2023 budget. However, unless there is a resolution or direction from council, we would proceed with including it as part of the 2024 and 2025 budget as well.
Follow on.
So through the chair to Director Radigan, so would we do that during budget time, or could we do that tonight? So if we don't adopt this policy tonight, that doesn't change anything then.
Director Gadigan is saying no. I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This was approved and for those years, the fourth year being not approved during the election year. The only thing that was left to do was to produce a policy for accessing the funds for each ward and member of council. So that's the only point I want to make. I don't know if that helps clarify anything.
Anything further from anyone else? Right, all those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on to item 11.3. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the 2023 Springwater Swing Tournament fundraising update? Councillors Fisher and Moore, that proceeds from the Springwater Swing fundraising account be allocated as follows. And we will need time for the discussion, but the Community Assistance Program, charitable and community organizations, physician recruitment, and further that the disbursement of these funds noted above be in accordance with the township procedures. And I will open the floor up, and it was pulled Deputy Cabral. Oh, okay.
No, the only comment I want to make is obviously we've utilized the funds in the past for some very good causes, but I wouldn't mind seeing some what would the word I'd be looking at? Maybe some guidelines or conditions on how often someone can get the money, how much money we can allocate, like similar to what we're talking about for the councillor discretion fund. It's kind of wide open, and we have some folks that come back on a regular basis and they avail themselves of the funds. I think if we had some conditions on how often you could access the funds and for what purpose you're going to access the funds for, it would make it a little bit more available to other folks who, to be quite frank, are not in the know, let's say. So just something along those lines, or maybe even pick a couple of nonprofits or charitable groups that do good work in the township and kind of target a few dollars to that at council's discretion, not necessarily because someone has come forward, maybe the scouts or the guides or the food bank, anywhere along those lines. Just a thought.
Councillor Fisher.
I agree. I think sometimes it's seen as a bit of a well that some people just keep coming back to, but there are some great initiatives. As a matter of fact, I mentioned to Councillor Garwood today, my daughter came in very excited because, in Midhurst, right, we're now getting transport for the kids initiative. I think we all unanimously voted in favor of this, and I'd forgotten about it until my daughter came in. She was really excited to go to the Elmvale Fair, right? And so that's and it jogged my memory. I brought it up in conversation today, and I thought, well, that was actually a really good move on our part. I don't necessarily think it should be yearly. Maybe the school board should get involved, or we should do something. But but certainly I think that's a really good initiative that we did. And so we should have some sort of guidelines. And maybe there is a yearly, I'm not saying no to it, right? But I think there should be some guidelines for it, as Deputy Mayor Cabral said.
Thank you. I'm all for guidelines. I don't see this well going dry. I think we still have money from years past that we haven't spent. So to prohibit people who are aware of it and are utilizing it, the intent is to raise money for community initiatives. We go out to the communities, we tell the communities that this money is available. We even ourselves find initiatives within our local world, and we still have money left over because our sponsors and people are so generous. So to me, to start putting parameters and telling people that are utilizing it, no, if we were maxed out or we had to start maybe spreading it across a little bit more. On that same note, the community assistance program, I think we've had one this term of council. I myself would like to see it not go in that direction. I think that the other opportunities for council to use this money would be less constrained. Also, to put something in place whereby the same people can't come year after year, I would have difficulty telling our physician recruitments yes and everybody else no. So I think it would be a across the board policy. And I do think that this, if we are choosing to support the physician recruitment, it's really the only place that sits well with me, because it's not a municipal level, in my opinion. Questions or comments from other members of council? I did see Councillor Fisher and Alexander. Councillor Fisher.
Sorry, I was I turned it on this time. You know what, you do bring up a good point. But maybe frankly, maybe some more diversity in people who know about it. Actually, maybe instead of constricting it, as I said before, maybe take a different stance where we actually let people know, like people at the Fair Board, know that maybe this money is available for the right initiatives, so that it isn't always the same people, or it's a more, I'll call it diverse group of people coming forward for initiatives. Maybe that's a different way to tackle it. Spread the wealth.
Councillor Alexander.
Pretty much exactly what I was going to say, Councillor Fisher. Maybe just do a bit better job of communicating, which it falls to us as well. Not like maybe a bit more communication on staff's part, like from the township level, but from us as well. It would be great to have a group of initiatives put in front of us, and to be not that you want to say no to people, but be able to look at some of the really cool things and opportunities going on, and be able to select groups that are very deserving without limiting, but broadening it.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And actually, to stem off of what Councillor Alexander said, is maybe even putting those good news stories out there in the world, right? And I think that's a big piece of it as well. We've talked a lot about communication this term. So however we communicate, we've already decided that, but there's a lot of community groups and communities that have benefited from these funds, right? I can think of probably one in every single one of our wards, right? This term. So maybe it's compiling that information and spreading that out, however the municipality wishes to do so. And then again, letting residents know that this is an option available to them. And that's what I'd like to see happen, at least.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Can you just refresh my memory, please? Where is the Berrien area physician recruitment?
I believe that they're both in one. We usually gave some to the north,
Not listed here.
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, it falls within the physician recruitment selection, the category. So it's both the Barrie area as well as the northern one. Sorry, I can't think of the other one, but at this time, but yeah, it falls for both of them. While I maybe have the opportunity to speak, I think the other piece that council may want to consider is that every year we typically have this event, and we're raising funds for different initiatives. Whether council would like to actually each year determine specifically what are some of those charities that you want to donate to, keeping in mind when staff go out and they seek registrations for the event, somewhat difficult for staff to report back to the donors saying where the funds are going to, because there's no specific charities identified, if you will. So that would be one piece that I would suggest. The other piece is we've talked about this previously about, and there was some hints around the table tonight about a grants program. And so I know we've talked about it, but you could potentially use some of these funds to seed a grants program where essentially say $10,000 to $20,000 or whatever the percentage you want to put in there or dollar value you want. And staff could come back with a formal grant policy whereby funds could be set aside. Community organizations could come to council or come to the township through an application process similar to some other municipalities that have developed it. And essentially, you could set up a committee where the committee could review the applications and based on the criteria and the policy, could assign or could select, if you will, or recommend where funds ought to go to those different charities. Council could ultimately be the final authority on that, if you will. So there's a couple of different options that you can explore here. So I put that out there for your consideration.
And sorry, just to recall in my mind as you were speaking, I do believe that was a notice of motion, or maybe it was an IFC brought forward, I think by Councillor Moore, about supporting graduations across the municipality, not just the one. So there could be potential for that as well. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that was put in the budget. For all the schools, excellent. No, the only comment I want to make is I think what CO Schmidt has suggested there is kind of like where I was kind of going with it. I just didn't know exactly how to phrase it, but to put a chunk of change in there, like you're saying, and then make it available as a grant program would work with additional funds, obviously still in there. For anybody who came to ask for us that, didn't qualify for the grant process. But I would propose that staff be asked to come back to council with a bit of a report on some of these potential options and how they might work. And I would also like to actually, and I know we haven't used it, but I have to play devil's advocate. And in the climate we have right now, it would not surprise me to see someone come before us for the community assistance program. And I would like to ask through the mayor to our finance director, how much we put into the community assistance program before and maybe what the balance is now, and also how much we put into the physician recruitment center fund. And the only reason I ask that is I think that when they come to see us, do they not ask for a specific amount? So yeah, do we know what that amount is for this year?
And I'll go back to Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. The two physician recruitments, I believe the Barrie area does request $8,000. And the second one, I believe it's South Georgian Bay. I could be incorrect there, but they are requesting $4,000. And that's been consistent for the past few years. The community assistance program, I believe, currently has a balance between 1,000 to 2,000. I can confirm and get back via email if that is acceptable.
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think part of the process here would be if it's between 1 and 2, that maybe we just toss another $1,000 into the community assistance program. The money's not going anywhere. And if we're not using it, maybe next year we could draw back out on it. But I think keeping a bit of a balance in there, when someone does come to us, at least we'll be in a position to provide them some relief. So that's what I would propose.
Thank you. And maybe through to CEO Schmidt. I recall there being a maximum per, like when an application came forward, there was a maximum someone could ask for. And I don't recall what it was, but I'm just curious. We've only had, Clerk Ainsworth has the answer.
Thank you. The maximum is $1,000 for the community assistance program application. And those are very far and few in between. The criteria is a little different than most other grant programs.
Right. I'm not going to bicker over where $1,000 goes if we want to top it up, but we haven't seen applications in many years. And if there's enough for 2 applications in there, that might take us to keep going. But if I can have someone put forward the amounts as our, there we go, Deputy Cabral.
I would propose, since we haven't had them, let's not bother with the community assistance program. However, would it be possible to say that if it's less than $2,000, that the fund top it up to $2,000? And that $12,000 be allocated to the physician recruitment program? And that the balance go to the charitable and community organizations, and further that staff prepare a report with options for a grants program that can be adopted at a later date by council, with a portion of the funds available to charitable and community organizations.
Clerk Ainsworth is just, and do you need that as an amendment, Clerk Ainsworth? Because I can move that. So we're going to do that second part just for the report on the creation of a grants program. So we'll do that as an amendment moved by Deputy Cabral, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favor of the amendment? And that is carried. So we'll move back to our main motion. Another add. Yeah. Do we need me to read through it again? So it's that we have nothing going into the community assistance program. We have the it was to be topped up to $2,000, and then the remainder minus the $12,000 to go to the charitable and community organizations. All those in favor? And that has carried. We'll now move on to 11.4. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report regarding the draft gravel road conversion policy? I have Councillor Thompson and Councillor Alexander, that the report from the manager of roads and fleet regarding the draft gravel road conversion policy dated September 20th, 2023 be received, and that subject to any comments received from council, the policy be finalized, presented to council for approval at a subsequent meeting. Councillor, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would move that we defer this potentially to the October 18th meeting. I'm just going to throw that out there in light of recent events. I do know that Manager Ha is here to answer any questions. I do know I've had extensive conversations with Mr. Ramdale regarding this policy and feel that potentially this is something that affects all the roads in the township that are gravel. So it has far-reaching effects. And I think we may need a little further time to digest this as a table and then have the opportunity to reach out to Manager Ha for any further clarification.
Deferred. October 18th. Yeah, fantastic. Seconded by Councillor Garwood. All those in favor of the deferral? And that has carried. Thank you very much for being here with us this evening. We look forward to you being here again on the 18th. Really sorry about your Wednesday night, guys. We should have pulled that up to the very front of the meeting. My apologies. We now moving on to 11.5, the Homer Barrett Park. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report regarding the Homer Barrett Park tree and sound abatement request? Moved by Councillor Garwood, seconded by Councillor Fisher. That the report from the manager of recreation, parks and facilities titled Homer Barrett Park tree and sound abatement request dated September 20th, 2023 be received, and that 7 hardwood trees and 2 spruce trees be planted along the Shaw Street Parkland border as depicted in Appendix 1, and that the funds in the amount of $15,000 be allocated from the Hebron Park Development Reserve Fund for the tree planting project. Are there any questions on this one? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm quite happy to finally see this on the agenda. I think I brought the motion forward February 1st earlier this year, so it's been a while, and I know the Shaw Street residents have been patiently waiting as well. In my initial motion, I think the desire, first of all, I've learned a lot about trees over the last 9 months or so. The initial desire was a more covered tree landscape along the fence, along with sound abatement or barrier of sorts. Understanding in many conversations with staff and the landscape architect, which I didn't know was even a thing, there's been safety concerns brought forward, and those have been addressed in the report. In the report, as Mayor Coughlin had noted, The recommendation is for 9 trees in total, 2 closer to the splash pad and 7 along really the space of the brand new playground that has been recently installed that is not in the figure 1 that is attached to the report. Personally, I think the Shaw Street residents want more. And while I think there's always a desire for more, I also understand that this is a win. 5 of those trees are replacement trees, so they are not brand new trees. So technically it is 4 new trees and 5 replacement in total. And again, I think a benefit from this is there's no taxation to the residents specifically. This is being pulled from the Hedberg Park a disruption fund, and that was developer funded. So again, our tax base is not being affected here. So I'm hoping the rest of council will support this motion alongside me. Thank you.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I read the report. And the initial concerns were noise and sound abatement. And the report really says that this is not going to provide sound abatement. I'm also a CEPTED practitioner, having taken the course back in the early 2000s. Crime prevention through environmental design is a recognized program. It relies on 4 principles, the major one being natural surveillance. And the idea is to be eyes and ears to prevent crime, injury, those types of things. It's particularly warranted in open spaces. Barrett Park is lined with houses. There is no streetscape per se, where people walking on the street or out in their front lawns would have visual observation of the park at large, just in looking over at it. So that in itself presents a problem. The only way to access the park is actually through points of access. Trees generally would not be planted in order to preserve that natural surveillance. For the playground, for other users of the park, the vulnerable, women, all of those come to mind. And CEPTED is a recognized worldwide, and it's being used all over the world specifically for this. And it's been incorporated into park designs going forward for a number of years. There's one particular municipality out in British Columbia that used CEPTED to the extreme. Fences on bordering properties cannot be any more than 4 feet high. Any vegetation within the park cannot be any higher than 3 feet. And any trees cannot have any limbs that protrude down below the 8-foot level. So there's no sound abatement quality here for these folks. That's noted in the report. And because of my past history, being a CEPTED practitioner myself, I unfortunately am not able to support this going forward. And I think spending $15,000 on trees is actually unwarranted. So unfortunately, I cannot support this, and I hope folks understand why.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral. And just for clarification, is it the replacement of the 5 trees or just the 2 new trees?
It's any trees that are going to be put in line that are going to obscure the park or the playground at all at any time.
I didn't see anything. Councillor Moore?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Brianna, or sorry, Manager Dean. We have large parks in Stone Manor, a couple of very large parks, and they border all the houses around of them. And has the township installed any trees along that fence line or along the perimeter of the park where the houses are? Thank you.
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself too, Councillor Moore and the rest of council. So in Stone Manor, in both parks, but I'll more specifically speak to phase 2, just because it's more recent and I'm more familiar with the actual development of that one. is through our landscape architect that was consulted on that project and did the design consultation. There is parkland border trees that border along the chain link fence on both of the street or both of the sides where the backyards are back onto it. There is also some trees on both of the street sides to the roads, and they're positioned so that there is still access and viewing into the park, as well as viewing from the yards into the parkland. So they're not put in big clusters where per se people might be able to go around or you wouldn't be able to see around them. And they are a mix of both deciduous and spruce style trees in those locations. I don't have the exact number, but they are placed with spacing in between them.
Following Councillor Moore.
Thank you. So would you say then, looking at the design that we were provided in the report, is that comparable to what I would see at Stone Manor, or more or less? Thank you.
Manager Dean.
Yep, thank you, Your Honor, through yourself to Councillor Moore. Yes, it would be similar. So the parks themselves are a different nature because they were built in different eras. So the designs of them and how they're situated within the developments are different. But in terms of having tree canopy within the park and having fence line tree canopy or tree coverage, they would be similar in nature.
I have Councillor Garwood, Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few things I wanted to go back on. First item was there was mention that the noise abatement or sound abatement was the primary focus. If you look at my initial motion, it says noise and privacy concerns. So it is not just the noise piece. The privacy concerns as well has been a primary focus. And that's what I met with the Shaw Street residents last winter when we walked the space and we talked about it. While of course there was a noise aspect, especially abutting the only splash pad we have in the municipality, there's also the privacy concern as well. So I respect comments, but understanding that it is not just noise, it's also privacy. But also I think about the report itself that was brought back. The second and third bullet in the report highlights staff met with industry professionals to review additional park plantings and crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, principles when adding trees for privacy. Out of those meetings, staff recommend placing 5 existing hardwood trees that have been previously removed. So from reading this report and my assumption through the mayor to Manager Dean, it is understood that the crime prevention has been top of mind when determining where these trees would be placed, and therefore would not contravene the CPTED, I'm saying it wrong, but crime prevention. Is that accurate?
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor, through yourself to Councillor Garwood. Yes, that would be correct. The recommendations of the trees and where they could go and where the original placement was did come through with a landscape architect consultant and based on the design of that particular park.
Follow on, and Councillor Fisher, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Thanks. One last question. And again, I know that in the image, it looks like they are clumped together, but you can confirm, Manager Dean, that it is a large space and those trees would be still relatively spaced out more than I personally would like, and I think the residents would like. But again, is that accurate?
That is correct. They would be spaced out. I believe it's about 10 to 12 feet.
CEO Schmidt. Oh, I thought you had your hand there. Councillor Fisher.
I actually took a ride out to the park and walked along the I guess would be the people's backyards abutting. I certainly don't profess to know anything about Septed or but I would say it seems already that there's a large amount of trees in their backyards. As a matter of fact, when I walked it, I really couldn't see their houses. Anyway, I just worry that the addition of more trees, even if they are spaced out, would obstruct view. Also too, they're to replace old trees, but What I did find, I was thinking I'd see a lot of dead trees, honestly, to be taken down and replaced, but it's actually a nice open field. So I'm a bit apprehensive, more so when it comes to the safety aspect of putting them in there. So that's my 2 cents.
I have Counselor Alexander and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To Manager Dean, 2 questions. One with respect to replacing the existing trees. Can you give us like a rough idea of timeline of when we had those trees and when they were gone? And then the second part of the question, which is complete, actually go first and then I'll ask the second part.
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor, through yourself to council. Through yourself, sorry. So 2 of the trees were actually cut down recently, one this summer and one the past. They were emerald ash borer that had affected them and they needed to be removed from a hazard standpoint. The other ones were removed prior to myself being here, but in conversation with other staff within the last 10 years.
And follow on, Counselor Alexander.
Thank you, Manager Jean. So the follow-on would be with respect to the noise abatement piece, which I feel like the report is essentially saying it's not going to fix the noise abatement, please. Is there anything in your mind that you'd come up with that would solve this concern? Because my worry is we go ahead with the trees, which will, help with the privacy point. But I think we'll still have a group of residents that potentially are not happy and are going to continue to come back with respect to the noise piece. So we haven't really solved the problem.
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor, through yourself to Counselor Alexander. So in discussions with the landscape architect and other park industry professionals, sound abatement is tough in a park, similar to houses that might back onto a busy road. Noise, kids' voices, laughter, it carries up and over. So trees will muffle it a little bit, right? When you're in the bush, it muffles sounds, but to truly minimize or mitigate that noise, it would be hard. We all know children's laughter and playing in our backyards and what it sounds like and how it carries. So when the park's busy, it's noisier. So it's not a recommendation to put a privacy style or security style fence on municipal parkland property and fully block the view. So from my discussions with consultants and from my opinion, I don't believe there's something that could fully mitigate the noise. Tree canopy and some coverage will muffle it, but I don't believe there's an option that I would present at this time that would mitigate it.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just with respect to the other parks that you're speaking to, I don't know whether or not CPTED principles were utilized in the design of those parks. I didn't hear you say that was the case. That could have been. However, the distinct difference from my standpoint would be that those parks have an open side to them at the street. So everybody on the street and across the street can see right into those parks. That's substantially different than the situation at Barrett Park, where basically the entire park backs onto backyards. So that presents for me the difficulty because of crime prevention through environmental design. That natural surveillance, in my opinion, has to be 100%. And I think it needs to be there. That park, as you said, was old, put in place numerous years ago. And, had these principles been in place at that time, I would suggest that maybe those trees would not have been planted there at the very beginning. The other thing I wanted to make mention of is actually the $15,000 figure. I don't know exactly what the trunk diameter size on these trees are, but I purchased 5 18 months ago at my place to replace some that got burned. Long story short, it was about $2,800 for 5 maples. 3 silver maples and 2 autumn fantasy, but the trunk size was between 6 and 8 inches in diameter. That was installed and they came and checked for them for 2 years and it was under $3,000. So I just am questioning also that $15,000 figure because it was a local company that supplied it. Do you know what the diameter size of these trees is going to be? It just seems that seems to be a fairly expensive option that might be able to, if it's voted on in the affirmative, to be done for substantially less money. So I just want to know where that figure came from.
Manager Dean?
Yep, through yourself, on your honor, to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So that figure is from working with numbers we have seen within procurement documents we've sent out for different parkland and tree installations. So that the number suggested in the report would be the upper threshold we were looking for. We would go out for procurement and seek full quotes on the supply, and the installation of the trees. And the thought would be to get a fairly significant size tree installed. So may need to be brought in with the larger spading equipment so that they were of a more mature nature at the point, as opposed to a smaller seedling style, so that they kind of had their effect almost. They had a larger effect at the time they were planted, as opposed to having to grow into it over 10 to 15 years.
Follow on?
Yeah, just to wrap my head around that, the ones that I purchased probably would touch the ceiling here. And I'm just saying that that's a 6 to 8 inch trunk size. So they did have to bring in a spader to put them in. So I would just hope that staff, and I'm sure that they will, it was a local company. I'm not going to say which company it was. And I'm just saying it seems pricey for 9 compared to under 3 for 5. That's all. So.
Great. Councillor Garwood, and then CO Schmidt, in case Councillor Garwood has comment on that.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, and just maybe to the Deputy Mayor's comment and to follow on with Manager Dean. I think, we're looking at an upset limit. Obviously, we would look to save as much as we can to ensure that we don't have to draw out $15,000 out of the fund. So if we spend less, obviously we'll only draw out what's required. So it's kind of more of a upset limit, so we don't have to come back to council if when you give us 5,000, it ends up being 8,000, right? So.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If it's not too much trouble, if Clerk Ainsworth could potentially pull up the report and show the graphic that I know everyone on council has reviewed. Just speaking specifically to what Councillor Fisher had noted around walking the property, and thank you for visiting the park and taking a peek. You should have let me know. I would have met you there. But but anyway, the 3 homes that back onto the new playground facility, in the report, we can see the old playground facility. So as it's coming up here on the screen, that playground has doubled in size now. So it's actually almost covering the 3 houses to the right side of that image. And right now, there really isn't many trees. I believe there's 2 smaller trees further out, closer to that playground. I believe they're still there since the construction. I'm getting a head shake that they are. But the other really areas there are pretty well blank, where when we get closer to the splash pad by the parking lot on the left-hand side, we can definitely see there is more tree cover there, which is a good thing because those are the folks I think that need it the most when it comes to the loud noise every day on the splash pad. And that's, I think, why those 2 trees are located there, specifically understanding that those residents do not have any of that privacy. So while the initial intention was both privacy and sound abatement, again, I think about it as we've talked about CPTED, we've talked about crime prevention, but the report that's been presented here has been presented with those things in mind. It has had a landscape architect review it. It has had staff review it. And this is the recommendation forward. Again, not the recommendation I even wanted. I wanted 4 times this, but this is, and the residents did, but this is what came back that passed CPTED, that passed that crime prevention and made sense to ensure that we are following through with other parks, as Councillor Moore had also noted earlier on. So anyway, that's my final comment on this topic. I wanted to again thank staff for bearing with us throughout this process. I know it's been a long 8 or 9 months, so thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Garwood. Just out of curiosity, the trees, oh, sorry, it's taken down. But the trees that are depicted as blue and orange are all hardwood trees. And they lose their leaves. So it's not going to help in either sound or privacy 6 months of the year. So I'm just curious if you had any input in why they're not spruce trees like the other two.
I'll go to Manager Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor, through yourself to Councillor Moore. So from following more within the SEPTED, the hardwood trees, the branches are higher up on the tree, so there is visibility lower on, whereas the spruce trees create a visibility concern from top to bottom.
You already said final comment. Councillor Garwood.
I'm not giving up on this one, Mayor Coughlin. Anyway, and also just to note to what Councillor Moore had mentioned, and thank you for the question. I also think the primary concern is those 6 months that it is hot outside, that folks are playing on the playground and at the splash pad. That's the main concern. I don't think most folks are sitting on their back deck in January. I'm definitely not. But understanding that I think that's when the folks feel it the most, is just understanding that they want a place in their backyard where they can feel private, even though it's an absolute privilege to back onto a park. I think it's a beautiful space. I know it can definitely be noisy. When I'm there for an hour, I get a headache just from hearing all the noise. So understanding that might be difficult for the residents that specifically live there. But thank you for the question, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher? Councillor Fisher?
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Garwood, and trust me, I took the time to even drive out there. Like I said, I guess I'm thinking this: if they want privacy, and I think a lot of them have done this, or some of them have, why wouldn't they buy their own trees in their own backyard? Why would we be paying for it? I also go back once again, if it was for beautification, I can see putting it. Oh, it's not up there anymore, but putting them in other locations. But if I could see planting a few trees in other locations in the middle of the park. But as for planting trees around these people's houses, again, concerned about the safety concern. And also if they'd like privacy, they can take that upon themselves. So that's my apprehension with it.
Council, before I do call the vote, here's my recap. This was designed by professionals. It was taken into consideration safety, crime, and fun. This was a park, and the money is coming from a Hebron Park Development Reserve, and this is what the residents are asking for. So, I mean, we all have different ideas on what we could do with this money and how we can alter this park, but I heard you say architect, I heard you say professionals, and I trust that if this is what's coming before us, I can support this. So I'll give Deputy Mayor Cabral the final comment, but we've spent a lot of time on this and I will be.
That's true, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to let you know that I took the SEPTED course. I'm a SEPTED practitioner, did it for a number of years. So if you're going to say that there's a professional that was involved in this, I would like to say that my opinion with respect to this park is professional in nature as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the vote, council. All those in favor? And that has carried. We are now moving on to 11.6. This is our site plan agreement update. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report regarding the site plan agreement update required an easement. This is for the White Owl property on Castle Drive. May I have a mover and seconder, please? I have Councillor Alexander and Deputy Cabral. That the report from the planner regarding application SP 2021-002 dated September 20th, 2023 be received, and that the bylaw be presented to council for consideration and approval at the September 20th, 2023 council meeting. Are there any questions or discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has approved. I'm now moving on to our information reports. We have number 3 being pulled. Councillor, are there any others that you would like pulled from this. It is the report listed herein. We have the site plan application SP 2023-003, the paramedic post. We also have the building services monthly report. Ditching on Floss Road 4 has been pulled, and then 4 is our traffic calming results. Anything else to be pulled? I'm not seeing any at this time. We'll be receiving those listed herein, 1, 2, and 4 with the 1, 2, and 4 with the exception of number 3. Are there any questions or comments on that? And seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. And we are moving back to number 3. Oh, and so I'm going to make one up. All right. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to get it on the floor, please. I have Councillors Alexander and Garwood, that we have the information report on the ditching on Floss Road 4. And is there any questions on that? Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to start by apologizing as I'm going to ask to defer this one as well. I did, again, due to recent events, I had spent a lot of time dealing with Mr. Ramdale on this issue. And I feel that at this given point, I would like it deferred probably just till October 4th, because if it is something we move forward with, there is timeliness around it before winter comes, but I would like to see it move to the October 4th meeting due to the recent events.
And I need a seconder for the deferral, please. Councillor Garwood. All those in favor? And that is deferred. We are now moving on to our verbal reports, and I will have our development updates, our county updates, county updates by.
You want that?
Oh, I do. All right. Who's doing that one? CAO Schmidt. Other duties as assigned.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to members of council. And just a quick update on the development in the Midhurst area. So neighborhood 1 being the Midhurst Valley development on the west side of Bayfield, if you will. So home construction continues in phase 1, which is the mixed subdivision. We anticipate about 120 or so closings of homes by the end of this month. With those closings will obviously definitely help with the commissioning of the interim wastewater treatment plant. Servicing continues in phase 1B, which is the Hickling lands located just south of the mixed subdivision. Base asphalt was in place this week, and it's our understanding that the sales program is not anticipated to happen until the spring of next year. Furthermore, the Thompson lands in the same area. Topsoil stripping and earthworks is underway. We do anticipate the export of topsoil and fill from this area starting next week. So just a little update from the ward councillor. Haul route will be via Carson Road to Highway 26, and notices have been given to the for the anticipated truck traffic along Carson Road to Highway 26. And it is going to be posted on social media as well to advise residents. Furthermore, on the roundabout project that the county is undertaking at Wilson and Seaton and Carson, it is on schedule, and my understanding it's to be Carson and Seaton is to remain closed until October 9th. And then switching gears over to kind of the east side of Bayfield, if you will, and neighborhood 2 in Midhurst Heights. So internal servicing on phase 1A and B of that property is approximately 40% complete. So happy to answer any questions from members of council.
Thank you, CAO Schmidt. Not seeing any questions. We'll move on to our county update.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Few items. One of the ones that they're going to try at County of Simcoe, it's for their paramedic services. They currently have 49 transport ambulances, and they have some spares due to supply chain issues. They're having a hard time trying to acquire new vehicles. So what they've done is they've made arrangements with York Region Paramedic Services to take 3 of their gently used ambulances and integrate them into their fleet. And they feel they might actually save a few dollars doing this until the 3 new ones that they originally had done to fill the gap. They're going to use that for the next little while. So that's kind of a nice partnership deal there. Community services from Ontario Health Central. They provided the county with $34,456 for use in their community services, one-time funding allocation. And they will be using it for the paramedic services community, paramedicine program, Georgian Adult Day Out program, Simcoe Village Supportive Housing, Mobility Clinic, and the Digital Health Coordinator. So they're going to put that extra money to good use. With respect to the transportation master plan was provided, just an update. It's currently in place, in progress, along with an overview of the progress completed to date. So phase 1 was multimodal needs and opportunities. Phase 2, transportation network development report, and it identified preferred transportation infrastructure recommendations and the best ways to address transportation issues and needs. Their expectation is that the final phase will be presented to council for its endorsement in the fall of 2023. So we'll see what's going to come of that. And with respect to their budget, they provided a high-level draft budget assumptions for council's consideration. There was quite a bit of discussion on that. Council member made some recommendations to try and reduce it a little bit more. Anyway, the budget's based on the most current information and time. Initiatives and programs will be included to respond to community needs as required, and their tax levy increase is suggested to be in the range of 2% for asset management and 3% for operating expenses, for a combined increase of approximately 5% for 2024. Of course, that's could change, and they did indicate that they made some significant efforts to keep it low and reduce impacts. So that's county.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deputy Cabral. Our municipal updates. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few items I wanted to mention. First item is the Sarah Vista Long-Term Care Home in Elmvale. I know council has unanimously supported this project in the past. Revera has communicated with us that they've made the difficult decision to pause the project temporarily due to challenging economic factors. They are working with the Ontario Ministry of Long-Term Care and look forward to pressing forward on bringing life to the new Sarah Vista building, the redevelopment in the future. Again, it is disappointing for the community, absolutely, but understanding that the project's paused, not stopped, and we look forward to working with Revera again in the future. Secondary to that is Councillor Thompson and I attended the County of Simcoe Wardens Golf Tournament last week, I believe it was. Again, golf's definitely not my game, but we had a great day and golf with some incredible folks and made a lot of great contacts. So that was a lot of fun. I also wanted to mention that last Friday was the final Springwater Farmers Market Elmvale of the 2023 season. Again, I wanted to thank staff and all the vendors and visitors that came out to the market. I'd say it was one of the most successful years just as a spectator, which is very exciting to see. So thank you again. And my final item is, of course, the annual Elmvale Fall Fairs returning to Elmvale on October 6th and 7th. So again, folks, make sure you're visiting the Elmvale community on Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll see you there.
Councillor Thompson.
I was sad to see the demise of the Barrie Advance last week, as we read we saw in the news, and I echo the sentiments of the Barrie mayor when he said it's a huge loss to our community. Having said that, I'd like to draw attention to Springwater News and a September 9th event that took place that I would like to thank Springwater News for coming and covering the event. We hosted a town hall type meeting in Anton Mills. It was sponsored by our CRA, and would like to thank Adams Funeral Home for providing the coffee and donuts. The theme of this town hall type meeting was welcoming our new neighbors and introducing them to some of the unique features of our community. And it was a huge success. Would like to thank Councillor Garwood for joining us there. And as a result of it, we were able to recruit a couple of new members to our CRA. So it was a great success.
Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander.
Actually, it's a question, Mayor Coughlin, via remark made by Councillor Garwood with respect to Rivera. We did engage them and provided them support. And I'd like to know if there might be some insight coming down the road that might be shared with council as to what's going to happen with that if we get other requests going forward now for the capacity that we already tied up with Rivera. So I don't know if that's something that Mayor Coughlin, through you, maybe to I don't know. It's just it's something that's obviously, you know, have to be addressed.
And I think the conversation was a pause, and if that pause turns into a long halt, then I think that the municipality is definitely going to have to take the reins on that. But at this time, they were still excited about it and still wanting to move forward. So I don't think we have an idea how long their pause is, and I'll go to Director Spagno.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I think Mayor Coughlin through to Deputy Mayor Cabral. The I guess the commitment to provide for the capacity and the needed units to service the development is really contingent on the final approval of the site plan for that specific property. So while council in principle has said that we would allocate, or that council would allocate those units for capacity to that specific use, if for some reason it pauses for longer than, then I think from my recollection, it's a 2-year time frame or so, and then it can be put back in the pot, but council can actually take another look at that and reallocate those units as it sees fit, because the approvals haven't been finalized. Now, my understanding, similar to Councillor Garwood, is that this is a pause. The proponents have every intention to move forward and finalize their site plan agreement and move forward with the development. They're just looking at different funding options at this point.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Fisher?
Midhurst Autumn Fest, September 30th. Love it if some of you came down. We're same as usual, a lot of games, events for the kids and families. So we're hoping to get a lot of people out from the community and neighboring communities as well. And apple pie eating contest, which I'll win,
Fantastic. Councillor Alexander?
I have no doubt. So I initially I was going to ask the same question that Deputy Mayor Cabral asked. So thank you for the clarification and asking the question. While I have the mic, and further to Councillor Garwood's promotion of the Elmville Fall Fair, I would like to add Go Rowdies.
I will also be wearing red, so feel free. Just a quick update here. I'm municipally wide. I would like to thank our firefighters for being out tonight collecting food for the food bank for our Stuff the Truck initiative. So thank you very much for that. I look forward to hearing about it. And I also wanted to bring council up to date on an initiative that has been in the works for quite some time. Elmville is going to be hosting at the Brian English tournament, much like we had done in the past where we've had the skills trade initiative. We have now partnered with OEAP and 2 other organizations that during our tournaments, we will provide hands-on experiences for kids. So rather than taking the kids to the skills trades, we're bringing the skills trade to the kids. I'm really excited about this. This was an initiative brought forward by Elmville Minor Hockey. They partnered with our staff here locally. Thank you very much for all the assistance. We will soon be seeing flags with some hometown hockey all the way across Elmville. So I'm really excited about that. And to our county staff as well, who took the lead on ensuring that we could bring this. And it's actually gained some traction, and the county is thinking about marketing it as a tool to bring skilled trade to other communities. So Elmville again is a novel template. So fingers crossed, it's gonna be great. So just an update on that. And thank you. Anything further from council? And not seeing any. We have a notice of motion. Councillor Garwood, I will turn to you for a seconder. Or seconder for councillor. We have Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So this is my notice of motion that was deferred from the last meeting. So this is whereas Heritage Park will be celebrating its 25th anniversary in 2025. And whereas council would like to commemorate those who contribute and continue to contribute to Heritage Park. And whereas George Allen has been an active and engaged member of the Ellenville community for many years, and Mr. Allen and the Ellenville Millennium Park Project Committee were instrumental in establishing Heritage Park. And whereas council wishes to honor Mr. Allen's continuous contributions to the community and Heritage Park. And whereas the roofed sign at Heritage Park is original to the park and requires replacement or refurbishing, be it therefore resolved that staff provide a report outlining options for either the replacement or full refurbishment of the roofed sign, including ways to honor Mr. Allen within the design. And further, that this report be provided by the first quarter of 2024 with the intent that the sign be installed by early spring of 2025, should it be ultimately approved by council.
Council, is there any questions on this? I have Councillor Moore. Or do you want to speak to it first? Sorry, my apologies. Councillor Moore?
Can I just ask Councillor Garwood if he would be amenable to an amendment to this? Because in the report, I'd like it to include a policy on naming rights or naming requests. I take your word for it that Mr. Allen is as lovely as you paint, but I certainly don't know him, and I don't know what this is exactly. So I would like to see something come forward where we can at least follow a process of some sort. There's lots of great volunteers in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Moore, Clerk Ainsworth is asking if we could have that as a separate notice of motion so that it would not be tied to this should this fail. Sure. Just a naming policy. Yeah, that's great. Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And while it will be something separate, thank you, Councillor Moore. I completely agree. Just a bit of background on this as well to maybe support the conversation this evening. This was definitely not my idea. It was brought to me by members of the community, members also that participated as a part of the Ellenville Millennium Park Project Committee, which is a mouthful, who established Heritage Park. I think there's really two pieces to this. Piece number one is with the 25th anniversary celebration of the park's inception and existence in the community. Community members thought that there would be a way where we could celebrate that accomplishment, but secondary to that, the existing structure meaning the sign isn't truly in line with our other signage across the municipality anymore. It's definitely dated, again, original to its our initial structure. And I think that also is part of Heritage Park. Again, it is not just a straightforward sign. There's multiple sides to it. There's hand paintings on the back of it. So it's an incredible landmark in the Heritage Park. But again, that's why we threw in the refurbishing piece. But then secondary to that, the way to honor Mr. Allen, a bit of what George Allen does. His name has come up here before when we've been talking about fundraising for Ellenville District High School and the large hundreds of thousands of dollars that him and many members of the community advocated to ensure that that project moved forward. Mr. Allen is the unofficial keeper of the park. He's in there often. I see him planting flowers. I see him picking up garbage. He's there daily, it seems like. And his contributions to the park and continuous contributions to the park is what many members of the community came forward and wished that I advocated for. So I think there's two pieces. A, the sign needs replacement, and B, a way to honor. Doesn't mean changing the park's name, doesn't mean anything along those lines, just a way to honor. Thank you.
Manager Dean.
Through your honor to yourself and the rest of council. So the township does have a park naming policy. It also does, one of our planners did let me know it does fall within our official plan as well. So when developers also follow it in new parks, and then if a delegation or a recommendation comes before council, there is a policy to follow through. So we can, I can share that with council so that everyone has it. But some of them are a name of a historical significance to the area, name of a street the park runs adjacent to, prominent topographical feature near the park, and so on. And I can share that. And if you wouldn't mind, just a follow on for Councillor Garwood, you did slightly mention it, but for the staff report, would you like this sign to follow the guidelines of the township signage program, or more follow, I guess, the a refurbishment of the current sign in the report or options.
Counselor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Manager Dean. I think I'm open for options. I think that's probably what council would also like to see is an options report of sorts that whether it be replacing the existing sign and seeing it match other parks and welcome to community signs, etc. Or again, the sign structure is there. It's unlike anything that I've seen in the municipality. So maybe it might be as easy as a small refurbishment as well, and wouldn't be a full replacement. So I think both options would be desirable from my perspective as well, keeping cost in mind.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I certainly agree that Mr. Allen is deserving of recognition, just as Mike Stone was with respect to the food bank. I guess where I would see it differ is we have a number of people in Springwater Township, and many of them come to mind, but I'm not going to say their names publicly. Some have been involved with community groups for years and years and donated time to the community on an ongoing basis. I know that there was a time when people were coming to council and asking to put in memorial trees, this kind of thing in the park. And the way we ended up dealing with that was rather than continually have folks making the requests, I think also it included benches and that kind of thing too. We developed a policy to address that. I certainly don't have any issue with recognizing George Allen because he has done an enormous amount of work. I would suggest that there may be a different form of honoring him rather than throwing a person's name up on the sign. I would picture more of a large stone with maybe a bronze plaque right outside the building itself there to honor Mr. Allen, with maybe enough space that there may be opportunity down the road for other giving members of the community that may be honored in the same fashion. So I guess my struggle is that this is specific to Mr. Allen. I can understand why, but I'm just wondering if Councillor Garwood might be amicable to that type of a recognition for Mr. Allen at eye level. Basically, when people walk in there, they would hopefully see a stone that could be polished, it could not be polished, but certainly a bronze plaque would be there for a long period of time. That's a friendly amendment that I'm suggesting. And I think really what we should be doing is looking at ways for this to happen so that each one of us doesn't just come before council. And I apologize if I make it sound like you're just coming before council. Obviously, there was some impetus behind it with community members and those that are involved in the community, but I'm sure we could all come before council with a similar request. So I guess it's twofold. I'd like to see staff develop something where people could be recognized, not only in Elmville, but maybe in Midhurst at our pavilion there, maybe in Grenfell, or in a similar fashion, because there are those people who give to the township as a whole, and there are those people that have given to their local community enormously. So I'm wondering, Mr. Councillor Garwood, if you would be amicable to that type of recognition for Mr. Allen. And I certainly agree that the sign, if it's in poor repair, should be repaired. But I think we were doing a facilities assessment. I don't know whether or not the sign was included in that or not. So first off would be my friendly amendment, if you'd be amicable to that.
Before I do go to Manager Dean, Clerk Ainsworth is asking if we can keep, if there's any policy drafting requests, that they be kept as separate motions. Yeah, that's okay. Manager Dean.
Through your honor to council. So through the facility audit, a sign in a park was not included in that audit. So it wouldn't be an item that would have been addressed in that.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And to what the deputy mayor has noted, yeah, I'm amicable to I'm easy going, Deputy Mayor Cabral. Yes, I think my motion is somewhat vague to say, whereas council wishes to honor Mr. Allen's continuous contributions to the community and Heritage Park. So whether it be on the sign, beside the sign, behind the sign, I think as long as that's included in the report, I'm a happy guy.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I would suggest that staff, when they come back with their report, I don't see in here where it alludes to any type of cost. So I'm hoping that they can bring back some options to us, bronze plate or whatever, big rock with bronze on it, or sometimes you see those ones that are stuck in the ground. It's like a steel plate with a bronze plate on it. Anyway, if that might be included, at least then we'd have something to vote on.
Manager Dean is taking notes. Thank you very much. Council, any further questions? Councilor Moore?
Thank you. Can I just clarify then with the naming policy that we have right now? Does that include the process of quantifying if a person is eligible, or are we speaking to the official plan on what the structure would be that we would name? So they're two different things.
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The policy is a pretty simple one. It really just speaks to the naming of a park, and it doesn't provide much other details around structures or such. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. All right, council. No further discussion. Councillor Garwood, final comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I can hear the anger in that. In a quick chat sidebar with the deputy mayor here, again, just clarifying, Heritage Park would remain Heritage Park. There wouldn't be any naming change. It would just be an honoring of sorts, wherever that may be. Just a clarification. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, for flagging.
It doesn't. All right. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We're now moving on to 14.2, a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Garwood and seconded by Councillor Fisher. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Recommendation that pedestrian zone signs be installed at the below noted locations: Kerr Street, Elmvale, Simcoe Street, Elmvale, Robinson Road, Elmvale, Sant Road, Midhurst, St. Vincent Street, Midhurst, Finley Mill Road, Midhurst, and that pedestrian zone signs be installed from May to October, starting in 2024, and further that staff review the potential locations through 2024 that would benefit from the installation of these signs for traffic calming measures and report back to council.
Councillor Fisher is the seconder, and then Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment to this also then, because I'd like to add the addition of Stone Gate subdivision and Stone Manor subdivision, 2 signs each, 2 pedestrian zones each for each location.
And seconder for that, Deputy Cabral. And Councillor Moore, do you have streets that you wish those to be on at this point? Clerk Ainsworth is asking, but.
Thank you. I'd like to reserve that. I'd like to consult with just a resident in each subdivision that have been, instrumental really in bringing forward concerns about traffic calming in those 2 subdivisions. So if I could just reserve that till I reach out to them.
Absolutely. And before we continue, Councillors Garwood and Fisher, before we sit here and add streets from every ward across the township, is it possible just to refer this back to staff and have them tell us where those potential areas are? Because there could be those ones that you've identified and ones that the municipality have. And if not, that's fine. That's you. I just don't have other street names. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'd like to continue forward with what we have on paper today, currently working in collaboration with Councillor Fisher and Councillor Moore and our respective communities. Again, I think This is something that Councillor Fisher and I have been speaking about quite a bit over the past few weeks. If Clerk Ainsworth could potentially put up an image, I do want to provide a bit of clarification around pedestrian zone signs. Some call them bollards, some call them pedestrian zone signs, but just so folks get an idea as exactly what this would look like, this would be a perfect example of in and around the community. Again, they would be removable, only placed during the May through October dates. The specific locations in Elmville that I've chosen are focused on school zones. Each street I've chosen, I've had large consultations with residents, even school board trustees as well, and staff members. And in collaboration, this is where I've landed, specifically focusing on those school zones. I won't speak for the Midhurst community. I'll let Councillor Fisher do that.
Thank you. Before I do go to Councillor Fisher, the technical name for them are flappy things. That's what definitely, right? Flappy things. Councillor Fisher.
I just want to say, I'm wholeheartedly behind this initiative. Our municipality in certain other areas, from one end of the Springwater to the other, is experiencing a lot of growth right now. And with that comes speeding, traffic, and community safety concerns. I believe it's imperative upon us to A, listen to our communities, and B, find the most cost-effective way to mitigate these types of issues that are coming forward. When we look at responses to residents, I believe that this is probably the best way to tackle it. And again, whether it's in Hillsdale, whether it's in Elmvale, Ward 4, Ward 5, this is something that people have asked for, and I believe it's up to our council as a whole to tackle it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do have an amendment that's on the floor, and it has been moved and seconded. And I believe we have no streets. So it's one sign with each of the Stonegate and Stone Manor subdivisions locations to be determined in conjunction with staff. That amendment is on the floor. Oh, Councillor Moore.
Thank you.
And for clarification, council, it is 2 signs within each of the Stone Gate and Stone Manor subdivisions, locations to be determined in conjunction with staff. All those in favor? Deputy Cabral, and this is to the amendment that's on the floor?
Yep. I guess
Okay.
it's gonna be the whole thing. When I read the word sign here, I didn't picture this. I'd like to picture back up on the screen though, if you don't mind. And I'm gonna tell you a story that happened to me on Saturday.
Deputy Cabral, I'm just gonna, actually, this isn't consistent with the amendment that's on the floor. The amendment is too specific. If we can go back to the main motion, and then you have the comments that would be pertaining to the flippy flappies. All right, all those in favor of the amendment put forth. And that has carried. Thank you. So the amendment has carried. And now Deputy Cabral, thank you. For your
Thank you, Mayor
indulgence.
Coughlin. I'm going to share a story. When I read this here, I pictured signs, pedestrian area. And I thought to myself, well, we're talking Kerr Street here. There's a border of grass on the side, just like this. And there's a lot of pedestrians walking back and forth. So motorists know that there are pedestrians there. So I kind of thought to myself, I don't see the purpose of the sign there. But when I thought about St. Vincent Street, there are no sidewalks there. So I thought to myself, okay, maybe there you could have them. These here are dangerous. These here are a traffic hazard for people on motorcycles and bicycles. This council had another time when someone popped one up on Carson Road. And the reason I bring this forward is I'll tell you how relevant it is. I went to the Boots on the Ground charity ride at Peel Police Headquarters on Saturday morning. And it's a charity for first responders to provide them with well, lack of a better term, mental support. And so I went down there. There was a couple of hundred people there, 150 bikes. And we were led by police officers on motorcycle. We went through a small community, and there was a little bit of a sharp turn in that. And I was probably maybe 10 bikes back, but all the bikes bunched up. The speed limit dropped from 80 to 60 and from 60 to about 40. There were 2 bikes directly in front of me, and I saw the very first bike move out to the right. the bike that was in front of me, because I was still braking, I moved over. I drove right over one of those 40-kilometer-an-hour signs. It damaged my fender. It damaged the reflector on the side of my bike. It didn't catch me on the leg, but I can assure you if I had have gone down, I would have sustained some serious injuries. I cannot support this, and I would say to council, I'm telling you the truth. This is a true story that happened on Saturday. I can show you my bike. These are dangerous, and I know that I had discussion with Councillor Fisher actually about these, and had I known that this is what was on the table for tonight, because it doesn't say bollard here or floppy sign, it says just a sign. But I'm sharing with you a true story. And if it happened to me and I go down, I'd like to know if somebody hits that because a car swerves in front of them, who's going to be liable? What's the risk for that? Because the people who are putting these out there, they're not thinking about people on bicycles. They're not thinking about people on motorcycles. So I cannot support this, and I implore council members, this is not the route to go.
Councillor Fisher?
I've looked into them extensively. Respectfully, I do disagree. You know, whether it be Sudbury, Kingston, they're used extensively in Newmarket as well. I can also tell you a story of my own. I had my boat in tow, and I was going into the town of Bracebridge the other day, and I can tell you, as I neared it, it was a 50-kilometer-an-hour sign in the middle, and I slowed right down. It was instinctive as I came into it. I felt constricted as I was driving my car. There's something almost psychological about it as you near the outskirts of town. I probably would have slowed down, but maybe not as quickly and not to that extent, in fairness. I believe that these are a measure that are very useful. And I also believe too, in speaking with my residents on each one of those roads that are mentioned within my ward, each one of them actually said to me, you know, because they do have children, they brought up the safety of their children. I do believe that, yes, they do stick up in the middle of the road, yes, but maybe that's the virtue, and maybe that's what slows down vehicles speeding through these areas.
And before I go back to Deputy Cabral, I think too, there are a lot of different mitigation approaches. We've had lots of them in our own traffic calming. I think that if we continue to do nothing, I mean, this might be wrong. This might be the wrong thing. We might learn a very hard and valuable lesson that this isn't the best thing, but we tried speed bumps on Seaton and we put those in and we took them out, and we will keep trying. But I'm okay getting it wrong. I'm okay having to go to residents and say, we tried, and you know what, this isn't the right approach. We're going to take a different approach next summer. But I think we do need to continue to try to make our communities safer. So I will support this initiative, and I do hope that it does move into the other wards as we continue with it. So at this time I will go, to CAO Schmidt with his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Just listening to some of the discussion around the table, and council has had other discussions about other matters. Would there be a consideration possibly for a pilot project, run it through the areas that you're talking about for the year 2024 and staff report back on the outcomes, if you will? It's another option that council can consider.
I think that's a great compromise, and then we can go to other areas. That would be an amendment, or I guess it actually only says, it says starting in 2024. So I think that the intent was to have them go back out year after year, but I think it might be good to have that done. And I did see Deputy Cabral, and then I have the mover and seconder again.
Thank you. Just a comment. CO Schmidt, I can appreciate that. That is at least an opportunity. What I don't appreciate is for expediency's sake, moving to these signs rather than sleeping policemen, which are the traffic bumps. And I had a conversation exactly about that. And this is what this is about. It's about expediting something to make it seem simpler to get the end result. The difference is when someone in a car hits it towing a boat, Councillor Fisher, and I'm pointing at you, they don't suffer. They don't get hurt. They get a ding or a scratch on their car maybe. What I'm talking about was a real life situation on Saturday that I managed to keep my bike up. And I hit that exact sign, the one that says slow. Where was it? Right in the middle of the road. And that's because the fellow that was in front of me saw the fellow in front of him avoid it. And we were all bunching up. He moved out of the way and all of a sudden it was right in front of my face. I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to go into oncoming traffic. That's how quick it happens. When you're on a motorcycle, it's very unforgiving when you go down, because I've been down before. So that's why I feel so strongly. And I'll tell you right now, if that were to happen, I think that Springwater Township would bear responsibility. Because I'll tell you right now, if you go out on St. Vincent and pop one of those up in the middle of the road, what do you think is going to happen if you do it as a private citizen? What's the first thing that's going to happen? Township's going to come and take it down. So if we're going to do a pilot project, I would suggest that there are places where this is totally and completely inappropriate. And there are some places where maybe it does make sense. Kerr Street with the liquor store there, okay, maybe that might be a place, but I don't think it should be in the middle of the road. That's the problem I have with it. The ones at the side of the road that narrow and constrict, as you're saying, they might be workable. But I'm speaking from experience. And the reason that this stuff goes on is because people in the motorcycling community are not considered when this kind of stuff is put into place. Same with the Ministry of Transportation. They're putting new guardrails down and they're using the cables again. That's not good for someone on a bike who goes into the cable.
I have Alexander and sorry. There's way too many hands here still. I'm gonna go to Garwood, who's had his hand up patiently. So has Alexander, and then back over to CEO Schmidt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Fisher and I did speak about the word pilot project. We specifically left it out of this motion and added in that last piece specifically around reviewing other potential locations through 2024 that would be beneficial from the installation of these signs. And Councillor Fisher and I very much also discussed the fact that we could be wrong on this. Absolutely. But as the mayor had mentioned, we have to try something. So I would prefer to keep the motion as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So this is coming in a lot of different directions. I 100% agree that speed and community safety is something we all consistently hear, and it seems like everything we've tried does not work. So it's a fresh approach. I like the approach and the fact that it's not necessarily permanent. So if it is bad, we have the opportunity to scale back on it without a huge cost. If we are looking at moving this forward and it's not moving forward until May regardless, is there the opportunity for staff to do a bit of research on how often there are motorcycle accidents? Because what Deputy Mayor Cabral is bringing to the table is very real and could cause a very real accident, which the township may also be liable for. And I think that's something we need to be aware of and make a decision with all the facts available.
Thank you. I think I'll go to CAO Schmidt on this, but when our township-wide traffic calming initiative was approved by council, which is approved by this council, it was a lengthy process to get there, and it was detail after detail, and the flippy things are included in our policy. So this is something that the township has considered, that we've researched, that the liability versus everything is in there. So the diligence has been done. We can have that reshared with council. But it has been considered, and it is an existing option for us. So I do see your hand, Deputy Cabral, but I did say CAO Fisher. Sorry, CAO Fisher. Wow, congratulations. CAO Schmidt and then Councillor Fisher. Yes, sorry, CAO Schmidt. No, yes, CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, sorry. To you. Just looking ahead on the schedule and not to further direction of council, but the notice of motion that's coming up at 14.3 speaks to automated speed enforcement, which to me, I think council needs to take these two notice of motions in consideration, because if we're talking about speeding and controlling the level of speed, if you will, and community safety zones, I see them, two of them kind of marrying up to some degree. And I'm not an expert by any means on automated speed enforcement, but I believe, council would need to designate different community safety zones if within the township for cameras to be installed, which would then, my understanding, maybe not need these quote unquote flippy signs. And that might be another option to explore as well. So I throw that out there. Again, not an expert, but I do see maybe some conflicts there between the two. Notice the motion.
Counselor Fisher?
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Schmidt. I actually, not to jump too far ahead into the next motion, but I actually see them both tackling different aspects of the same problem. Somebody driving through Elmvale for the first time ever speeding, just like myself up north. The flippy things, I believe, would mitigate their speeding. When it comes to, and again, not to jump too far ahead, when it comes to the speed cameras, I believe that that's actually often changing behaviors in our own neighborhoods. Unfortunately, I'll say it, in Midhurst, many of the cars that speed past my home, I probably drive up the road and find them in somebody's driveway, right? One of my neighbors, I think I'm not just speaking about Midhurst. I think that's all throughout all of our wards. So I actually, they are both solving two different aspects of maybe the same problem. So I actually don't see that one cancels out the other. I still, and I'll say it again, I believe that the bollards, flippy things, whatever we want to tag them, I believe that they're very cost effective. They are less money than a speeding bump, and they can be removed. And you know what? If we come back in 9 months' time, and we remove them next year and say, hey, this was not effective whatsoever, then I think we're mature enough to have that conversation.
Deputy Cabral, and then Counselor Garwood, and then
Thank you. Thank you, CO Schmidt. That was a comment that I was going to make. But I will also say that photo radar actually is a better deterrent than the bollards because people get fined for it. You're anticipating that people are going to slow down because those bollards are in the way. And that may or may not be the case. The other issue, I'm sitting here a little bit perplexed because what's really going on here with this motion is a circumvention of the traffic calming policy, which really should have been where this came from. Not as a motion, in my opinion. It should have come as a traffic calming policy request, and that if the councillor, after the traffic calming policy request has been made, decides that they want to push it further, that's the time that they do it. So actually, I would suggest that this is out of order. It's not an appropriate motion to be making at this time, because you're not following the policy guidelines that have already been set for the township. That's how this happens. Because ultimately, this is a traffic calming request that is not following the current policy that's in place for the township of Springwater. And that's just an aside. I do believe that, it's one thing to say, oh, it's cheaper, this, that, and everything. The difference is there's a risk to people being injured. And that's the key piece that we have some counselors here that aren't getting. They're just so fixated on wanting to put a bollard in the middle of the road that it doesn't matter if someone gets injured. It won't be them, because guess what? They're
Deputy
not riding
Cabral,
motorcycles.
I think that.
But I would like to say
insinuating what
that
other
this
councillors have done.
motion is,
Deputy Cabral.
excuse me, I'm just saying this motion, I don't believe is in order with the current policy for traffic calming. And I would ask that the clerk suggest whether it is or whether it isn't.
I will go to Clerk Ainsworth to discuss the traffic calming initiative policy, and then back over to Counselor Garwood.
Thank you. So just as a generalization, a council bylaw or council policy, council can override it should they wish to by resolution. Whether what the path forward is through the policy, that I would have to defer to Manager Ha, because I'm not too sure exactly what the process would be.
Manager Hod, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. I know it's been a while since we've been back through what the first initial step is, because I will say that there are at different times, initiatives are brought forward by members of council, initiatives are brought forward by members of the public. It does seem to make it into our chamber in different ways. I think the intent is just ensure that what we are doing is consistent within the policy. So I don't know if you could speak more to that.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to the rest of council. So we do have a policy in effect. Requests do come from residents. We then undertake a traffic study, that sort of thing. Whether or not this necessarily follows the policy, I think we're kind of at the discretion of council's wishes here. If they want to see a pilot project or want to, go a different route. We have received requests on these streets this year. We're working through some of those studies. Some haven't been completed, but that's where we are.
Thank you for that update. Councillor Garwood's been waving at me for quite a while. So is CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Well, I have many comments as to what the deputy mayor was mentioning. I wholeheartedly disagree, and I'm calling a recorded vote.
Are you calling the vote at the same time? You actually have to say, I'm calling the vote.
I'm calling the vote.
The vote has been called at this time, and Clerk Ainsworth, there is a recorded vote requested.
Thank you. And as a reminder, this is the main motion as amended. The amendment included the additional signage that Councillor Moore had requested for Stonegate and Stone Manor subdivisions. Other than that, there have been no amendments made to the motion. A recorded vote was requested. So when I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
Yes.
Councillor Alexander.
No.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Fisher.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
No.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Garwood. I didn't know if you were asking for both at the same time or one and the same. We are now moving on to item 14.3 and notice of motion by Councillor Fisher, and your seconder, Councillor Fisher, is Councillor Moore. And I will turn the mic to you.
All right, thank you. 14.3 notice of motion regarding automated speed enforcement. Recommendation that staff be directed to provide a report outlining details, option, and costs associated with automated speed enforcement programs, and that in this report be provided ahead of the 2024 budget for council's consideration. Basically, not to belabor the point, because we've sort of broached upon it already. I think we all know that again, speeding, traffic, and community safety are at the forefront of things happening in our communities. But a lot of the speeding is happening locally, the 20,000 residents that live here. And I think that in order to curb behaviors, frankly, we need to, for lack of a better term, hit them in the wallet. And speed enforcement cameras are a way to do it. I have had discussions with Mr. Romdeo briefly about it. There is a way to mitigate our costs with it as well, so it really does not hurt the taxpayer, as it's been expressed to me. I'm certainly not in a position to speak to that. That's why I asked that a report come forward, so that we can really look at our options. And again, this is something that residents are, not just in my ward, I think across all of our wards, are asking for. And I would also say this, that if we had cameras that we could position and move from location to location. So I'm not talking one camera. I'd like to see multiple cameras so we can really tackle the issue. I'll not to belabor the point, but I think pretty soon word will get out that, hey, my buddy Joe got a ticket the other day, and people will start to curb their behavior in the area. I also think too that even for people coming in, and whether it be delivery drivers, Amazon drivers, guys in dump trucks going to our new subdivisions who frankly drive with a heavy load over the speed limit. It's been complained about quite a bit. I think once they start getting tickets, it doesn't matter if they're a resident here or not. They'll start telling everybody that, hey, it's pretty costly to speed in your areas. Roads like Carson Road, Finley Mill, this is important. So I believe that this is another approach. I think our tackling speeding and traffic has to be a multi-pronged approach. This is one that I propose. Thank you.
Fantastic. Is there Councillor Alexander?
I will just speak quickly to this because we are getting late. I do agree. I think this is a very good approach that will allow us to, as you said, mitigate speeding and have the cameras placed in different places within the township. I'm assuming they can be moved without people knowing where they're going to be. So people know.
We cannot take the sneaky approach. We have to actually give them lots and lots and lots of advance. Like, here comes a radar. So that will all be presented in the reports.
All right, well, that's disappointing, but I still do.
I mean,
I do still feel that it is a good approach and will get the end result, which is, again, I believe it's mainly our own residents, unfortunately, and hopefully we'll curb that behavior.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. At AMO a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, Councillor Thompson and I actually spent some time at the LAS booth speaking with the folks there. They were talking about the City of Barrie partnership, and right now I'm on the City of Barrie's website, and again, they're talking about how the City of Barrie partnership helps Ontario municipalities enforce speed limits and improve road safety. So yes, I'm really happy that Councillor Fisher brought this forward. If he wasn't going to, I was going to. So thank you for doing that, and I 100% support this motion.
Councillor Thompson.
I too 100% support this motion. Just a question that I have. These cameras are only allowed in designated school zones and community safety zones. So how do we designate community safety zones in our community? Who decides that, or what's the process?
And can we just designate the entire municipality a community safety zone and then keep going?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to members of council. So this topic came up on Friday at my county CAO discussion. City of Barrie was there and I asked some questions of them. So my understanding is it's up to council to determine which zones you wish to designate. And that's up to you. Town of Essa, or the Essa Township, also is in a program, not the LES program. And staff will provide you with an update in a couple of weeks here with the LES program. Keeping in mind the LES program, there's probably about 70 other municipalities ahead of us that are signed on to the program, so it'll take some time. But if you wish to seek other options like what ESSA did through a different provider, there are other options that are available.
And I think too, I do like that this resolution doesn't speak to one specific, it just says in general. So I look forward to reading that. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. With respect to the photo radar, yes, there are only certain areas you can currently place it. But I would like to see the options on the availability of partnering with, I know there's companies out there that provide cameras, and also the option for moving them around on a cost sharing basis. The other part that maybe the folks sitting around the table here are not aware of is there's also an opportunity for a diversion type of program where if they are caught speeding, they might be able to avoid going to court if they opt to compensate financially in a different manner, which doesn't necessarily mean that the courts get it, the township may get it. So there are positive sides to it. It's specifically designed for the community safety zones and school zones in particular. Those are the most vulnerable areas where a lot of pedestrian traffic is available there too. So I do support it. I thought it was just a touch premature because everybody else is just testing the waters right now themselves. But I guess to find out more about it would be certainly worthwhile.
Perfect. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Going on to 14.4, notice of motion by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Garwood, whereas council has heard concerns from residents about the condition of the railway crossings throughout the township. Be it therefore resolved that staff be directed to send correspondence to CP Rail to petition the for the maintenance of the railway crossings in the township of township of Springwater be made a priority. My apologies, Councillor Fisher, I stole your thunder there. This is moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Garwood. I do know that staff have been in correspondence through that, but I think an official letter from the township will just add some weight to that. So
I'll speak briefly to it. I think that we all know through a few discussions in council as of late that there's some real questions about the condition of our railroad crossings. I think it just provides a little bit of teeth. You know, it's one thing that apparently discussions have happened, but sending them some correspondence to let them know that it really is in our radar, on our radar is important. And I'm sure Mr. Hawk can report back to us of any correspondence back. You know, get mean with them, let them know we mean business.
thank you. Council, all those in favor? That has carried. Are there any other notices of motion? Are there any items for future consideration? May I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the bylaws, please? Councillors Fisher and Moore, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. The 2023-087 backyard chicken licensing bylaw, 2023-088 chicken discretionary fund policy, council discretionary fund policy, 2023-089 transfer easement of White Owl prop. There's chickens and owls, like transfer of easement to White Owl Properties Limited for storm sewer purposes, 5000-376 to ZB 2023-013 of Bowman of 38 Boyston Park. Are there any questions on these bylaws? Seeing none, all those in favor? Confirmation bylaw, may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw? I have Alexander and Garwood, that bylaw 2023-090 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on September 20th, 2023, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Thompson, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 9:57 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on October 4th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor?